waking up exiled inside a rusted level 1 scrap train crawling through a pitch-black wasteland with nothing but dry bread was a certified death sentence. Then my innate sublimation talent broke every system rule, infinitely evolving broken junk into god-tier gear and predicting deadly routes ahead of time. Now I command an untouchable level 3 armored fortress cruising at 60 km an hour, bristling with auto turrets, pocket dimensions, and infinite heavy firepower. Smash like and subscribe right now before we fire up the engine and tear through the void. It all began when a chilling mechanical broadcast echoed through the cold iron carriage, wishing us all eternal life before departure. Mechanical voice echoed out of nowhere, announcing that the train was about to depart, and wishing us all eternal life. I woke up on the vibrating metal floor with a pounding headache, completely disoriented in a strange train carriage. My mind was totally blank. All I remembered was pulling an all-nighter watching anime before everything suddenly went black. I honestly wondered if I had worked myself to death and ended up straight in hell. The broadcast chimed again, declaring that all survivors had awakened and pushing out the basic train survival guidelines. Rule 1. Never abandon your train. Rule 2. Every 24 hours after departure, all trains will pull into a new platform. We get a 3-hour stop at each platform to scavenge resources, which we need to level up the train and unlock upgrade modules. Rule 5. Stay inside until the train stops at a platform. Rule 6. Just survive. The system warned that the first stop was 1 hour away. I pinched my cheek just to make sure I was not dreaming. I pushed myself up off the cold steel deck and looked out the window at an endless, barren wasteland rushing past. The only notable feature inside was an oval terminal at the front with a floating screen labeled Train Control System. I walked up and tapped it. The interface lit up with 4 main tabs: Captain Info, Train Details, Chat Room, and Trading Platform. I opened the chat room to find 10,000 people spamming panic, from rich kids shouting about their godfathers to workers cheering escaping their jobs. Then one guy started mocking everyone, claiming it was just a prank variety show, and swearing he would jump off the moving train right then. The chat immediately erupted with warnings and jeers, daring him to try. In less than a minute, his messages stopped, and the live counter quietly ticked down from 10,000 to closed the chat and swiped over to the train details, checking out my level 1 train stats and the heavy list of upgrade materials. The 20 km/h speed bothered me, because if every train takes exactly 24 hours to hit a station, speed should not matter. Unless something out there chases slow trains. I looked back out at the endless wilderness, feeling the chill of that thought sink. Scrolled down to my personal status screen, where my mental power and stamina both sat at 100 points. Right beneath them was a unique talent called sublimation, which let me consume stamina or mental power to evolve literally anything. I searched the chat room for the word talent, but not a single person had mentioned having one. Back home, broken computers and sluggish cars always ran like new after I touched them, which friends joked was machine spirit luck, but it turned out to be real. I walked over to the wooden workbench, where the system starter kit was waiting, a bottle of water, a piece of bread, and a chipped knife. I focused on the rusty knife and triggered sublimation, watching 10 points of stamina drain right off my status bar. The blade shifted into a level 2 sharpening enchantment dagger, gleaming with a vicious cold edge that made my heart race. I slashed it through the air, and the sharp whistle proved it was 10 times better than the piece of junk I started with. If my talent could evolve anything without limits, then this entire train was fair game. I walked back up to the main control terminal, my pulse pounding with excitement for what was about to happen. I pressed my palm flat against the oval console and muttered sublimation. The invisible force surged back through my fingers, but this time it dragged my stamina down several times faster than before. I hit the deck with a heavy breath as my stamina crashed from 90 all the way down to 30. Looking up at the upgraded cabin, the system banner flashed that my train had successfully reached level 2. The level 3 upgrade demanded 200 kilos of wood, 200 mechanical parts, and 400 kilos of metal blocks. Then a gold notification popped up, congratulating me for setting the fastest upgrade record and handing me a special module card. I caught my breath and inspected the overhauled cabin, from the reinforced frame and base plate to the refurbished workbench. The improved wheels and engine bumped my cruising speed from 20 km/h up to 40. I could feel that the train still had room for further sublimation, but my drained stamina could never handle another round right now. I could have burned mental power instead, but with madness on the table, I shelved that idea immediately. The level 2 upgrade menu offered 4 choices: from a basic carriage blueprint at 0 coins to advanced modules costing up to 5. I did not have a single train coin to my name, which made me worry that upgrading early had backed me into a corner. When I asked the system, it confirmed I could hold the selection across 3 different destination stops until I had the coins. Relieved, I claimed the only free option on the list and pulled the basic carriage blueprint into my hands. Building it required 100 kilos of wood, 150 of metal, 60 parts, and optional glass for windows. Since I did not even have the raw materials to build the base carriage, sublimating the blueprint was out of the question for now. I tucked the blueprint away and summoned the diamond-shaped card, watching it float in my palm in a halo of light blue particles. The description was completely barebones, just stating that activating it gave a special module without any hints. I scarfed down the starter bread and drank the water bottle, which brought my stamina back up to 50. My hands itched to sublimate the card, and with 50 stamina plus plenty of mental power in the bank, I decided to risk it. I whispered sublimation, and the card exploded with blue shooting stars that swirled wildly around the cabin. From the sky, my train was tearing through the wasteland like a blazing blue comet spitting azure fire. When the blinding glare finally settled, the energy vanished and I slumped flat against the deck feeling completely hollowed out. The reward flashed on screen, turning my generic special module card into an exclusive module card. It burned 30 stamina and 40 mental power, which left my mental power at 60 and slapped me with a mental exhaustion debuff. Aside from my aching muscles, I did not actually feel crazy, so I figured my heavy physical fatigue was just masking the mental drain. Before using the card, I offered a quick prayer to Buddha, the Emperor, and every god in the phone book just in case. I activated the exclusive module card and azure light swallowed me whole, fusing the card straight into the train control core. A golden prompt declared that I had unlocked the unique captain module called Crossroads of Fate, giving me a second choice on every route. Right then, the ceiling speaker chimed a cheerful chime, warning me to hold on tight because the first station was right ahead. I checked the console clock in disbelief, realizing the full hour had flown by with only 60 seconds left to arrival. Right on cue, Crossroads of Fate kicked in, splitting the holographic screen into 2 platform options, Swamp or Armory. The system warned me to lock in my destination immediately before the timer expired and chose at random. If someone stockpiles food and I stockpile weapons, their food is basically mine, so I locked in the Armory without hesitation. The system confirmed the Armory selection and instructed me to brace for arrival. A deafening roar shook the rails as the space ahead twisted and tore open like a monster maw ready to swallow the train. The train horn screamed into the void as the locomotive charged straight through the spatial rift. We burst out onto an eerie underground military platform with 3 hours on the clock, and the system marked the zone as safe. The heavy train began to decelerate, its engine rumble settling down to a low hum as we pulled into our very first stop. The locomotive came to a dead stop, locked safely at the station platform. I stood by the carriage exit, drew my glowing dagger, took a deep breath, and hit the door release. As the pneumatic doors parted, absolute silence spilled in from the outside. Everything was pitch black except for a colossal matchbox-shaped bunker right in front of me. There was no sun in the sky, yet every crack on the ground and the entire building stood out in crystal clarity. Spatial manipulation really is something else, which explains why every train hits the stations at the exact same time. It took less than 10 steps to reach the bunker entrance, where a heavy iron door sat tightly shut. I jammed the dagger into the seam and pried it open, instantly releasing a foul wave of rot and decay. Stepping inside, I found endless rows of wooden crates neatly stacked, every single one reeking of age and rot. I popped the decayed lock off the nearest crate, revealing 2 bolt-action rifles resting half-buried in dry sawdust. The system tagged them as Lothar marksman rifles, packed with 40 rounds of matching ammunition. 2 rifles and 40 bullets in just 1 crate, and there were dozens more stacked across the depot. I spent the next hour hauling crate after crate of guns and ammo back to my train cabin. After multiple round trips, my adrenaline crashed hard, leaving my muscles screaming in exhaustion. I pulled up my status bar to see my stamina down to 15 points, though my mental power had recovered to 70. If I did not find some calories during this 3-hour window, I would not have enough strength left to haul another box. I took a breather, stopped moving heavy crates, and scouted the side rooms until I spotted several sealed iron ration tins sitting on a rusted shelf. They looked just like the vintage military ration cans I used to watch people unbox in survival videos back home. I leaned in close to check the faded square embossed stamps on the cold metal lid. I popped the tin with my dagger, uncovering neat rows of gold bar-shaped compressed biscuits giving off a faint milky aroma and a sour fermented tang. Expired or not, I shoved one straight into my mouth and chewed as fast as I could. I stopped at one biscuit because dry survival rations will leave you dying of thirst if you do not have fresh water. I counted 4 barrels holding 80 compressed biscuits in total, securing half a month of food for an adult male. Nearby I found some sealed bottles of water that smelled suspicious, but I lugged them back to the train anyway. The armory was a rotting concrete matchbox packed with collapsed racks, slimy piles of trash, and an increasingly suffocating stench. 2 hours in, I only managed to find 42 intact rifles, while the rest were rusted junk meant strictly for the recycler. I also scavenged loose steel plates and solid timber beams, knowing that anything I did not build with could be traded later. I stacked the haul inside and checked the console, seeing 30 minutes left on the clock before departure. I had enough wood and mechanical parts to assemble the basic carriage blueprint, but I was still short on metal blocks. I headed straight for the innermost section of the bunker, checking the living quarters and barracks that had been left untouched. In the very last room, a sharp snap echoed as my foot crushed straight through dry bone. I looked down at the shattered shin bone and casually apologized to the skeleton. Horror movies and dead bodies never really fazed me, so finding human remains felt completely ordinary. Beneath the ribcage, a dust-covered paper document envelope caught my eye. It made no sense for a flimsy paper folder to stay perfectly intact when solid iron and oak had rotted away. Curious, I pulled the document bag out from under the skeleton. Instead of opening it on the spot, I jogged back to the locomotive to scan it through the console for hidden traps. The console scanned the thin cardboard sleeve and tagged it as a level 1 treasure chest. I silently thanked my skeletal friend and reached to tear the seal, but stopped right before opening it. If everything in this world could evolve, then this treasure chest was prime material for sublimation. I checked my status, sitting comfortably at 30 stamina and 80 mental power. A tiny folder could not possibly cost much, and I had plenty of ration biscuits to refuel anyway. I focused on the cardboard folder and activated sublimation, watching my energy drain away. A harsh system warning flared as my mental power slipped below 50, hitting me with self-doubt. I flopped onto the deck like a beach fish, staring up at the swinging ceiling light until my breath finally leveled out. My stamina sat at 20 and mental power at 50, but aside from being physically beat, I did not feel any of that supposed self-doubt. Upgrading a level 1 chest to level 2 had eaten 40 total points, which was pricier than I expected for a plain paper sleeve. The prompt showed it could not evolve any further, so with its potential capped, I prepared to crack it open. I tore the seal on the folder and let the loot spill out. 4 heavy bronze train coins materialized right in front of me, instantly solving my empty wallet problem. Next came a pristine Colt M1911 pistol, its dark steel slide and textured grip feeling rock solid in my hand. The final drop was a level 2 blueprint for an external garbage collector, the exact automation tool I needed to scoop up trackside loot on the move. So treasure chests were the actual source of train coins, and opening that envelope put 4 shiny tokens straight into my balance. I opened the train menu to find all my level 2 upgrade choices still waiting right where I left them. I spent 1 coin on the low-level water tank blueprint and 2 coins to buy an extra hour of station stop time. That left me with exactly 1 coin, meaning another chest at the next station could fund the 5-coin burst acceleration engine. The departure clock jumped, giving me an hour and 15 minutes of precious breathing room. With the timer extended, I picked up the Colt M1911, and the craftsmanship made the armory rifles look like crude iron clubs. It turned out every gun in this survival game could chamber the exact same universal low-grade bullets. I slapped the full magazine in, stepped up to the open carriage doorway, and lined my sights on an empty wooden crate out on the platform. I squeezed the trigger, and a violent bang blasted the crate into a shower of splintered kindling. My wrist stung from the vicious recoil, leaving me staring at the gun in total disbelief. The armory rifles fired the exact same bullets, yet this pistol hit with more than double their stopping power. I caught myself wondering what sublimation would turn this pistol into, but quickly killed that reckless thought. Both my stamina and mental power were scraping the danger zone, so another upgrade would have to wait until I recovered. I stepped back to the console to examine the 2 blueprints I had on deck. The low-level water tank blueprint preserved fresh water for 10 whole days without spoiling, costing 10 kilos of metal and 20 mechanical parts. The external garbage collector blueprint handled automated platform scavenging, needing 30 kilos of metal and 100 mechanical parts to build. Tossing in 300 extra mechanical parts unlocked an auto-recycler mod that routed all scavenged junk straight into the workbench for scrap processing. I checked my total stockpile: 210 kilos of timber, 60 kilos of metal, and 220 mechanical parts. Building both utility modules right now was possible, but it would drain my metal and delay my first passenger carriage. With plenty of time left on the clock, I decided not to rush fabrication and gave myself a moment to catch my breath. With 1 hour left until departure, I booted up the global trading platform. A system rule popped up, blocking captains currently docked at a platform from listing items until their train actually departed. It was clearly meant to stop players from using the market as infinite free storage while scavenging a station. But the restriction only applied to selling, meaning I was completely free to buy whatever other players listed. Between station purchases and unrestricted private DMs, the rules were so leaky it almost felt like the system wanted us to exploit them. My shopping list had only one priority: metal blocks. I glanced at my pile of 42 marksman rifles and 80 compressed biscuits, sitting on the ultimate barter stash. In a desperate survival game, nothing buys peace of mind faster than a loaded gun and 2 weeks of food. I refreshed the listings, but the few scraps of metal on the board were priced at laughably insane gouging rates. Nobody was actually trading, just hoarding their iron and waiting to see how high the market would spike. I hopped over to the regional chat, which was already flooded with frantic messages from captains who had cleared their first stop. One guy cursed his terrible luck after spending 3 hours digging through a junkyard only to walk away with a mountain of scrap tires. Another player complained about getting dumped into a smelly marshland where the foul black mud ruined their boots and yielded nothing edible. A few argued that rich black soil was a gold mine for agriculture, sparking an immediate flame war over whether dirt was worth carrying. A skeptic laughed in their faces, asking how anyone expected to run a farm inside a cramped train cabin. Then someone popped into the feed asking to buy mechanical parts to craft a mystery blueprint. The guy dropped a screenshot of a basic machine fishing rod blueprint with automated casting, causing an uproar across the server. Survivors lost their minds in the feed, demanding to know how someone had already scored a manufacturing schematic at stop 1. Desperate players started undercutting each other right away, offering stacks of parts just to trade for starter bread and water. Another parched survivor was practically begging in the chat, screaming that they were dying of thirst without a drop to drink. In the middle of the noise, someone casually asked if anyone else had run into a treasure chest. The chat ground to a halt before erupting with confusion, with hundreds of people demanding to know what a treasure chest even was. The leaker tried to play dumb and went silent, which only triggered a wave of toxic fury from the mob. Self-righteous survivors started moralizing through the screen, accusing him of being subhuman for withholding survival secrets from the group. Cracking under the pressure, the guy finally folded and uploaded a screenshot of himself cracking open a level 1 treasure chest. The standard chest only dropped 2 train coins, basic wound medicine, and an insulation pad blueprint, proving my sublimation talent had doubled my payout and handed me a lethal Colt pistol. 2 coins for a level 1 chest and 4 for level 2 meant level 3 should drop 6. Even if standard chest loot looked thin compared to my sublimated haul, medicine and coins were pure gold in this wasteland. Then a trade notice popped up from a guy named Li Shaoxing, offering raw metal and asking for weapons. A guy prioritizing guns over food clearly had his basic survival locked down. I opened a private chat, and he messaged back right away asking if I wanted to buy metal. When I asked for his stock, he threw back a guarded question about how much I actually needed. I asked if he could supply 150 kilos. The chat went completely dead as Li Shaoxing stared at his screen in disbelief. He replied that he had the stock, but warned that my starter knife was only worth 10 kilos. I used the console camera to snap a photo of a marksman rifle and sent it straight to his screen. 1 rifle and 20 rounds of ammo for 150 kilos of metal. He freaked out that I had a real gun, but immediately started screaming that the price was daylight robbery. I rolled a brass cartridge across my knuckles, totally unbothered. I was the only gun dealer on the rails. I told him straight up that when unknown horrors hit the next platform, a loaded gun is the only thing between him and a grave. Li Shaoxing knew it was true, and his lucky pile of metal suddenly felt useless without firepower to defend it. He tried bargaining down to 100 kilos, but I shut him down immediately. Li Shaoxing asked for time to think, and I casually told him to take all the time in the world since I was busy anyway. He probably wondered what on earth I could be busy with. Having zero clue, I was still parked at Station 1 getting ready to build an entire carriage. Li Shaoxing caved and accepted the deal, but asked if I was hoarding metal for an upgrade, or if I had a weapon blueprint for mass production. He bragged that he would reach level 2 within 3 stations and offered to be my exclusive arms dealer on the market. Having that much raw metal meant he probably possessed a resource talent of his own, but I had zero interest in prying. Hitting level 2 in 3 stops was cute considering my train was already level 2 before the first station, so I just told him to make the swap. I laid the bolt-action rifle and 20 brass bullets onto the open deck as the trading system instructed. A virtual halo swept over the weapons, vaporizing them in a flash and replacing them with a towering stack of solid iron ingots. The system notary handled the whole transfer instantly, making scamming completely impossible. With all my materials secured, I pulled out the basic carriage blueprint, slapped it onto the workbench, and smashed the build button. Metal and gears vanished from my cabin, condensing in midair behind the locomotive under an invisible gravitational force. The completed carriage dropped out of the sky, slammed onto the rails with a heavy rumble, and locked its heavy hitch right into the locomotive. The system flashed green, confirming the construction of an unmodified 10-meter lower-class carriage. I stepped through the rear archway into a wide 10-meter cabin, tall enough to stand comfortably in, though the window frames were completely bare without glass. Finally, I did not have to cram all my supplies inside the locomotive cabin like a hoarder. I glanced at my low stamina and mental power, putting any crazy ideas of sublimating this new carriage on hold. I hauled all my loot into the new car, saw a few dozen minutes left on the clock, and turned back toward the bunker for one last sweep. My stamina sat at 21 and mental power at 59, leaving me sprawled flat on the train floor like a dried salted fish. I burned my last shreds of energy hauling 2 more heavy loads of scrap and ammunition out of the bunker. I also kept my word to the skeleton, digging a proper grave with a shovel and setting up a blank stone marker. The departure timer struck 0, and the train let out a deep mechanical groan as the wheels began to roll. As the locomotive gathered speed, violent purple spatial ripples warped the air across the track ahead. The train punched through the rift, hurling us right back out into the endless, pitch-black wilderness. A cheerful chime rang out, congratulating the 9,892 captains who made it past the first stop alive. Then came the real kicker. Our beginner safety grace period was officially over, and safe zones were no longer guaranteed. The chat room exploded in outrage, with people screaming about how someone had managed to stay a whole extra hour at Station 1. Skeptics claimed the departure rules were fake while others threatened to report whoever cheated. Players cursed missing out on safe salvage, while one survivor admitted they barely escaped being swallowed alive by desert quicksand. While the lobby argued, I sat down on the deck and counted my arsenal, 49 marksman rifles and 1,100 rounds of ammunition. My raw material reserves were looking just as solid, sitting at 150 kilos of timber, 104 of metal, and 162 mechanical parts. I dumped broken crowbars and screwdrivers into the recycler for raw scrap, keeping the sturdy tools ready for my next stop. Building the low-level water tank and external garbage collector only demanded 40 kilos of metal and 110 parts, which I could easily afford. I set the mounting slots on the console, placing the water tank inside the new carriage and bolting the collector to the exterior left flank. Fabrication completed, locking a heavy-wheeled steel tank into the carriage floor, built to hold 1,000 kilograms with isolated chambers for clean and dirty water. I dumped 50 kilograms of suspect armory water into the wastewater compartment, taking up just 1/10 of the tank. It lacked an active filter to make it drinkable, but having safe bulk storage was a solid start. I fired off my first public message into the regional chat, buying water, glass, fiber, and blueprints in exchange for loaded rifles and food. The global chat immediately went haywire, drowning the feed in shameless beggars and flatterers screaming for a real gun. One shameless player claimed to be an innocent college girl, begging for free rations in exchange for wild promises if we ever met. I stepped out onto the roof coupling to check the collector, which sat as a compact black alloy box waiting for the next station. Back at the terminal, my direct message inbox was completely buried under hundreds of flashing trade requests. A guy named Zhao Ke offered to become my loyal lackey and do whatever I ordered if I just handed him a rifle. Then a clown named Lin Xiaopeng tried to guilt-trip me, demanding I surrender my weapons so he could distribute them for the greater good. Looking past the noise, Shangguan Xue offered 20 kilos of raw lake water, while Cohen Jones put up 16 kilos of glass. Seeing Western names on the roster proved the survivors came from different nations, or maybe even entirely separate Earths. I purged all the freeloaders and moral blackmailers with a quick block, leaving only the real traitors on my screen. 20 kilos of untreated lake water was nowhere near enough for a military rifle, so I drafted a firm counteroffer, Shangguan Xue back, telling her that untreated lake water was barely drinkable, and she needed to show some real sincerity. Over on trainee 3-3924, Shangguan Xue frowned at her console and asked me to name my price. 100 kilograms, I replied without blinking. Water was life and death out here, and since she had no containers and unpurified sludge took real effort to boil, 100 kilos was entirely fair. Xue sent back a string of question marks, completely stunned by the price, before asking for time to think it over. Xue agreed to the trade, but immediately asked to buy matching ammunition with extra water. I could not help but wonder where she had gathered that much lake water in the first place. Finding a lake at stop 1 was reasonable, but holding on to bulk liquid without containers before the market unlocked was the real puzzle. She either scavenged heavy drums on site or built a storage tank from a blueprint, just like I did. I had zero reason to turn down the deal, so I agreed to trade 20 rounds of ammo for her extra water. The system projected the trade intake point directly over the top hatch of my water tank. A steady stream of crystal-clear lake water poured into the reservoir, and I had to fight the sudden urge to take a gulp. It looked clean, but drinking untreated raw lake water without boiling or filtering it was practically a death sentence. The transfer finished, and a system ping announced a new friend request from Shangguan Xue asking if we could do business again. Straightforward trades were hard to come by, so I accepted her request right away. Compared to Li Shaoxing and his cocky attitude, dealing with someone who kept things brief and hassle-free was a breath of fresh air. I worked through my private messages, trading away several more marksman rifles and ammo boxes for piles of glass panes and woven fiber. I loaded the glass and fiber into the carriage modification slot, watching seamless window panes materialize into every open frame. The howling drafts vanished instantly, turning the drafty steel shell into a solid, insulated cabin. When the dust settled on my trading spree, I still had 21 marksman rifles left in my personal reserve. I did not set crazy gouging prices. As long as an offer was fair, I let the guns go. Once other captains upgraded their trains and unlocked their own blueprints, these basic bolt-action rifles were going to lose their value fast. Hoarding loader junk was a rookie trap, because sitting on depreciating assets only leaves you broke later. With business wrapped up, I grabbed a loaf of soft bread and a bottle of clean water to enjoy my first proper dinner in this world. I headed back to the locomotive cabin and found a corner near the engine block to curl up for the night. Survival calculations could wait until morning. My body was completely drained and all I wanted was sleep. The train rattled rhythmically across the dark wilderness under a giant silver moon as my eyes finally drifted shut. A sudden midnight chill tore through the cabin, waking me up with violent shivers. I rubbed my bleary eyes, rolled my stiff neck, and peered out the frosted window. The world outside was still the same eerie, pitch-black wasteland drenched in cold moonlight. I pulled up my status bar to find my stamina back up to 87 and mental power at 91. The console clock read 3:37 a.m., meaning I had barely slept a few hours. I opened the chat room to find the lobby still scrolling wildly with insomniacs and terrified survivors. Since falling back asleep was impossible, I dusted off my jacket and got back on my feet. With my stamina and mental reserves refreshed, it was time to put sublimation back to work. I drew the matte black Colt M1911 from my waistband, eager to see what sublimation could do to a masterpiece. The next stop would not be safe, and heavy firepower was the only real guarantee of survival. I whispered sublimation, and a wave of stamina instantly drained out of my body. The gun lengthened and widened in my grip, its matte black frame etching with faint, intricate glowing circuit patterns. The system flashed, introducing the level 3 dark light enchantment pistol, capable of converting stamina into armor-piercing bullets. It burned 40 stamina, leaving me sitting at 47 stamina and 90 mental power, a cost I could live with. I stacked a few thick scrap metal plates against the reinforced bulkhead to build a makeshift target. I channeled stamina into the trigger, and a blinding flash erupted as an armor-piercing round screamed out of the barrel. The round punched clean through all 3 steel plates, leaving a glowing, molten-rimmed hole straight through the center. My stamina ticked down to 45, proving that 2 points of stamina converted one normal bullet into pure destruction. A faint resonance told me the pistol could still evolve further. But the brutal recoil was already pushing my wrists, so I held off on another upgrade to avoid breaking my arm. I walked back into the new 10-meter passenger car, ready to evolve the cabin itself. I pressed my open palm flat against the metal wall and activated sublimation. It only burned 20 stamina, a surprisingly light cost that dropped me to 25 points. The carriage evolved into a level 2 warm train carriage, permanently locking the interior temperature at a cozy 22 degrees Celsius. No more waking up shivering in the middle of the night. Unlike the locomotive, the passenger car hit its evolution ceiling in a single upgrade, but I was already more than satisfied. I brought a thin blanket over from the driver cabin and spread it right across the warm metal deck. Burning half my stamina cured my insomnia on the spot, and I curled up to sleep until we pulled into Station 2. While countless survivors froze through the night and drained their stats to the floor, I slept like a rock inside my climate-controlled carriage. I woke up at 10:27 a.m., stretching my rested limbs as energy surged back through my body. Station 1 had arrived at 1 in the afternoon yesterday, which made me wonder if buying that extra hour pushed today's arrival back as well. I stepped through the connecting vestibule back into the locomotive, where the temperature plunged right back to a bitter chill. The console was flashing red with private messages, flooded by desperate players hunting for guns as the unsafe second stop approached. Among the bids, a survivor named Lu Zhou asked if I would take a manufacturing blueprint in exchange for a gun. A blueprint was an infinite factory that churned out items forever, making it 10 times more valuable than a disposable rifle. Curious to see what he had found, I messaged back asking what kind of blueprint he was putting on the table. Over on train E3-9802, a terrified Lu Zhou scrambled to his console the second the notification pinged, rushing to upload his screenshot. The screenshot loaded, displaying a Tier 1 train seat blueprint requiring metal, wood, plastic, and fiber. A chair blueprint was the last thing I expected to see. Right now nobody would waste metal on comfort, but blueprints are permanent assets while basic guns only lose value over time. Having an actual seat was tempting enough, since sitting on the cold metal floor was getting old. I messaged Lu Zhou that I would trade a rifle for the blueprint, but capped the ammunition at 10 bullets. Lu Zhou broke down in tears of relief on the other end, thanking me over and over for saving his life. He added that without a gun, he was guaranteed to die at the next stop, repeating it like a man who had seen his own ghost. That level of certainty felt strange, making me wonder if he had some sort of foresight talent that showed him the future. Everyone had their own secrets out here, so I kept my mouth shut and finalized the trade. I took the blueprint to the workbench, spent the materials, and watched a sleek black passenger seat materialize on the deck. Sitting down in an actual cushioned chair felt like rejoining human civilization after living like a caveman. In the final hour before arrival, I cashed in on the panic and offloaded 15 more rifles along with 300 bullets. I held onto the remaining guns, because when an unsafe platform hits, you do not sell your own firepower. I checked my status, sitting at a pristine 98 stamina and 100 mental power. I grabbed one of the standard marksman rifles from the rack and triggered sublimation. 13 stamina drained away, dropping my bar to 85 as the evolution locked in. The gun transformed into an exquisite marksman rifle, wrapped in ornate gilded engravings with double the kinetic impact. Its evolution potential was completely tapped, still weaker than my dark light pistol, but a solid sniper backup nonetheless. The chat went dead silent as the arrival timer ticked into its final minutes, the tension thick enough to choke on. With 30 minutes left, the Crossroads of Fate interface flared across my main console. It gave me 2 new routes, Platform 1, a Level 2 Goblin Camp Hunting Zone, or Platform 2, a Level 3 White Forest Collection Site. The module was displaying way more intel than before, attaching level ratings and specific hunting or collection tags to each station. A Level 3 collection platform sounded significantly less lethal than a pack of goblins, so I tapped the White Forest. The system locked in the White Forest and flashed a warning to sit tight and hold on. 5 minutes blew by, and the familiar spatial storm tore open across the track ahead. A wash of pale gray light swallowed everything as the train broke through the rift and pulled into a ghostly monochrome forest. The console gave us a 4-hour dock timer and stamped the platform as a low-risk zone. I strapped the dark light pistol to my waist, slung the exquisite rifle over my shoulder, and hauled on my supply backpack. I hit the door release and stepped down onto the tracks into complete, suffocating silence. Every single tree as far as the eye could see had bleached gray bark and pale white leaves. It was so unnervingly quiet that my own heartbeat sounded like a bass drum in my ears. Nobody in the global chat had ever mentioned seeing risk tags, which meant the threat ratings were another exclusive perk of my Crossroads module. For a collection zone, there were no obvious herbs or minerals in sight, just endless white trees and a faint overgrown trail winding into the fog. I followed the overgrown trail deeper into the silent heart of the white forest. Every nerve in my body stayed on high alert, watching every shadow for sudden movement. At the end of the trail, the trees opened up to reveal an orchard packed with strange white fruit. I walked up to the nearest branch and snipped a fruit loose with my enchanted dagger. I brought it closer to smell, catching an intoxicating sweet fragrance cut with a faint bitter tang. My mouth watered violently, hit by an uncontrollable urge to shove the entire thing down my throat. A sudden alarm screamed in my skull, snapping me out of the trance just in time to fling the fruit away. I checked my status and nearly choked. My mental power had cratered from 100 all the way down to 72. I had plenty of food and water back in the car, so losing my mind over an unknown wild fruit made zero sense. The drain rate was terrifying, eating my mental reserves faster than casting sublimation on an entire train. The danger of this station was the fruit itself, and not being able to skin items out in the field was a huge pain. I used my dagger to slice a strip of cloth from my shirt and tied it tightly across my nose and mouth. I was not about to walk away from free loot, so I unzipped my tactical pack and got to work harvesting. I packed the bag to the brim, wiped the sweat from my eyes, and thanked my lucky stars for a razor-sharp dagger. I hauled the load straight back to the locomotive and laid a fruit onto the console scanner. The console identified it as level 3 white forest fruit, warning that raw consumption released hallucinogenic toxins that permanently destroyed maximum mental power. Soaking it in cold water for 5 minutes neutralized the poison, turning it into a miracle food that rapidly restored mental power and built permanent resistance to illusions. A cold shudder ran down my spine as I patted my chest, realizing how close I had come to crippling my own brain forever. I dumped my entire harvest into the water tank, watching the dull gray skins transform into brilliant pure white over 5 minutes. I bit into a purified fruit, and an explosion of honey-sweet juice filled my mouth, making dried biscuits taste like cardboard. I emptied the rest of my pack, checked my guns, gripped my enchanted dagger, and headed straight back out the door. A round trip took 20 minutes plus 10 to harvest, giving me 4 full runs before the 4-hour dock timer ran out. Outside the train, the external garbage collector had deployed, scurrying between the white tree line and the tracks like a busy worker. The boxy little drone trundled back and forth dumping leaves and twigs into the recycler, looking adorable even if twigs felt kind of useless. I worked like a machine in the orchard, slashing stems and filling load after load with my cloth mask tied tight. I hauled my final load through the carriage doors with 32 minutes left on the dock countdown. My total haul topped over 100 kilograms of white forest fruit, securing enough fresh nutrition to keep me going for weeks. Missing departure out of pure greed was a fool game, so I called it a day and locked the doors. Tallying my pantry gave me 100 kilos of fruit, 79 compressed biscuits, and 21 bottles of clean mineral water. I leaned back in my black chair, chewed on fresh fruit, and opened the regional chat room to see how everyone else survived stop 2. I glanced at the live counter at the top of the chat, and my heart skipped a beat seeing the head count plummet to 8. The chat feed was pure chaos, starting with a guy screaming in agony because drinking raw lake water was tearing his stomach to shreds. People mocked him for drinking unboiled swamp water, right as another captain messaged his final words after getting his lungs punctured by wild bison. Shameless trolls made disgusting jokes about taking his wife, while a bleeding survivor begged anyone for wound medicine to stop an infection. Starving captains were spamming the board for bread and water now that their starter gift packs were completely empty. Back on Earth, modern hospitals could patch you right up, but out here, a single infected cut or a missing meal was a guaranteed death sentence. The chat feed was full of people whining about terrible drops, from trash-filled shacks to foul swamps they could not even step foot in. Another terrified captain barely escaped a wild boar stampede that nearly flipped their train and punched massive dents straight through the hull. People were trying to barter rancid vulture meat for a sip of water, while traumatized survivors swore they would never step off at Station 3. Not everyone had the luxury of sublimation and crossroads of fate to filter out death traps and cherry-pick rich resource zones. With the dock timer winding down, I remembered the automated garbage drone was still running its collection loop outside. I figured if the little guy brought back 10 kilos of dry wood from the White Woods, it would already be a minor miracle. I tapped the workbench display, and a glaring golden prompt flashed that a level 3 treasure chest was ready to claim. I rubbed my eyes vigorously and looked again, shouting holy crap at the top of my lungs. Resting right in the middle of a heap of dirty leaves was an ancient grayish-white wooden chest that outshone everything around it. I had given up on finding a chest because wandering deep into that endless white labyrinth was an easy way to get lost and miss the train. Yet the clunky little drone I had laughed at had actually rolled into the deep woods and hauled a treasure chest back on its own. I patted the robot's square head, proudly bragging about what a genius I was for building the recycling station in the first place. If the little guy had facial expressions, it definitely would have rolled its eyes at how fickle human beings are. Sublimating a level 3 chest would push it straight to level 4, guaranteeing 8 train coins and higher loot. I checked my status, sitting comfortably at 45 stamina and 92 mental power before triggering sublimation. The golden vortex faded into the container, burning my stamina down to 20 and mental power to 62. The wooden box transformed into a level 4 treasure chest, and my exhaustion vanished behind pure excitement. I rubbed my hands together with a greedy grin and popped the heavy silver latch. The chest spat out 8 train coins, a level 4 external warning device, white forest fruit tree seeds, gray-white train paint, and a ceramic bulletproof vest. A level 4 defense module would turn the entire global chat green with envy, but bragging online was a fast way to get hunted. I tried sublimating the warning device, but my combined stamina and mental pool were nowhere near deep enough to evolve a level 4 structure. The specs were insane. It automatically targeted hostiles within 100 meters, piercing camouflage, invisibility, and illusions alike. I routed the blueprint to the roof of the locomotive, watching a layered steel sentry tower lock into place with a 360-degree red scanning eye. I mounted 5 of my spare marksman rifles into the sentry turret, giving the automated defense system 5 barrels of lethal firepower. Next, I pulled up the level 3 white forest fruit tree seed info, curious about what it took to grow them. A 30-day growth cycle was long, and demanding half a kilo of fresh water every single day made it an impossible luxury for normal survivors. 1-kilo water tank and sublimation in my back pocket, I was practically born to run a private orchard on rails. With 3 minutes left on the clock, I grabbed an iron shovel and rapidly filled several wooden crates with gray-white forest dirt. I hauled the soil boxes inside, shut down the collector drone, and dumped its gathered debris straight into the workbench recycler. The recycler broke down the haul into 12 kilos of wood, along with level 1 white leaves and white stones that processed into pure white pigment. I gave the little robot a fond pat on the head, promising to sublimate it next once my stamina recovered. The dock timer hit 0, and the train lurched into motion with a sudden jolt that pushed me back against the seat. We accelerated into a swirling spatial distortion, tearing through the gray mist and leaving the white forest behind. The rift collapsed, dumping us right back into the boundless, pitch-black wilderness beneath the pale moon. I stretched my arms and checked the console, where a private message notification from my friend list was pulsing softly. It was from Shangguaningshue, asking if I needed to buy more water. I messaged Shangguaningshue back, making it clear up front that my weapon stock was closed. When no reply came, I was about to close the chat until she pinged back apologizing that she was taking a bath. I stared toward my water tank in disbelief, wondering how much water she was sitting on to casually take a bath in the apocalypse. I brushed it off and asked what she actually wanted to trade, reminding her that guns were off the table. Inside train E3-3924, Shangguaningshue stepped out of a massive wooden bath barrel, tied up her wet waist-length hair, and demanded 32 kilos of wood, 50 kilos of metal, and 40 mechanical parts. I asked how she was so certain I had train upgrade materials, and why she thought I would sell them instead of upgrading my own engine. She replied that she hated dealing with dozens of people, and calculated from my 20 rifle sales that I was the only captain holding diverse materials in bulk. Her logic was solid, except I had actually sold over 40 guns, more than double what she estimated. I did have the materials, but trading them for more raw water was useless when my tank was full and boiling did the job. After a brief silence, Shangguaningshue sent over a screenshot and said it should be enough to seal the deal. It was a level 1 water purification device, built to filter wastewater into drinkable supply at 1 kilogram per hour. That explained her endless bathwater, and trading away a completed unit meant she almost certainly owned the reusable blueprint. When I asked if she owned the blueprint, she gave a non-committal dodge, stating only that the device was worth the materials. The blueprint was hers, but a finished purifier was more than enough for me, so I agreed to the deal. The trade completed, and I installed the purifier right between the dirty wastewater tank and the clean reservoir. The unit kicked on with a quiet mechanical hum, drawing dirty wastewater through its filters and trickling clean, drinkable water straight into the storage reservoir. I placed my palm against the chrome casing and whispered sublimation, letting a light trickle of stamina flow into the hardware. The system flashed, introducing the Level 2 Premium Water Purification System, boosting filtration to 3 kg per hour and unlocking the ability to desalinate seawater. Tripling the flow rate and purifying seawater was huge, solving my drinking water needs no matter what weird terrain the train pulled into next. Curious about what other captains saw on their screens, I messaged Shangguaningshue to ask what perks appeared when she upgraded her train. She sent over a screenshot showing a basic carriage blueprint, a welding kit, a wooden bed blueprint, and a 1-hour dock extension. Carriage blueprints and extra stop time were fixed across all trains, but the other 2 slots were completely random and varied wildly in quality. Shangguaningshue asked to buy train coins from me, but I turned her down flat. When she asked if I wanted to buy more water, I cringed at the thought of drinking her recycled bathwater and promptly shut the deal down. I turned back to my own unbought Level 2 upgrade, the Train Burst Acceleration Device Blueprint, priced at 5 train coins. I dropped the 5 coins without hesitation, leaving 4 train coins in my wallet as the blueprint downloaded into my terminal. The blueprint demanded 50 kilos of metal and 200 mechanical parts to build, unlocking special acceleration shells that tripled train speed for 10 minutes. I checked my material reserves and saw that I was only short a handful of mechanical parts to start construction. The post-station market was bustling, packed with starving captains desperate to trade anything for a bite of food. I pulled up my inventory of compressed biscuits, ready to cash in a few golden ration blocks and scoop up every mechanical part one needed. It took 7 compressed biscuit blocks and a mountain of endless haggling to finally gather the missing mechanical parts from other players. Shangguaningshue had the right idea avoiding public trades, because arguing with starving people over a few bites of food was a massive waste of time. I dumped the 50 kilos of metal and 200 mechanical parts onto the workbench, watching the acceleration blueprint blaze with radiant blue light. The device assembled, but the spec sheet revealed that crafting each triple-speed bullet demanded a full train coin along with raw metal and gears. Munching on white forest fruit had brought my stamina back to 55 and mental power to 70, giving me enough juice to test sublimation. 30 stamina and 40 mental power drained away, evolving the machine into the red triple-speed train acceleration device with 5 daily activations. I carried the crimson booster to the locomotive console, watching a silver halo fuse it to the frame and open a dark firing breach on the dashboard. I gritted my teeth and dropped 2 train coins to manufacture a pair of silver acceleration bullets, each one thick as an arm. I stowed my last 2 coins away, fighting the childish urge to test fire a shell just to watch the speedometer redline. I crashed on my blanket in the warm carriage, waking up after a solid night of sleep with my stamina and mental power fully maxed out at 100. I washed my face, hummed a tune, and walked back to the soil crates to dig up a white forest fruit tree seed. 30 stamina flowed into the seed, evolving it into a blessed white forest fruit tree seed that matured in just 9 days and produced 1 blessed fruit every day. Its potential hit a cap for now, so I scooped out a hole in the gray-white soil, planted the blessed seed, and gave it a thorough watering. Heading back to the driver cabin for breakfast, I spotted the dormant garbage robot sitting like a square metal matchbox and remembered my promise to upgrade it. I tried channeling stamina into the little drone, but the energy just vanished into thin air without doing a thing. I switched over to mental power, dropping 40 points as a golden evolution halo swallowed the machine whole. The system flashed, introducing the GT-1 automated treasure hunting robot, built to locate and map platform chests for a single train coin per run. A pair of articulated binocular camera lenses popped out from its square head, rotating around before locking their gaze straight onto my face. I named the little guy Wally, and it chimed softly before tucking its lenses away and powering down into sleep mode. Speed bullets, robot deployments, train upgrades, everything wanted train coins, and my wallet was draining way faster than it was filling up. I searched the regional chat logs for train coins, curious to see if anyone else had figured out what they were actually used for. The forum was totally clueless, full of starving captains wondering if coins bought food at future stops while they chewed on dirt. I posted a bundle of 1 compressed biscuit and a bottle of clean water onto the market, setting the buy price at exactly 1 train coin. At 12:30 p.m., the crossroads of fate flared back to life with 2 choices: Platform 1, Doomsday Town, a Level 2 mission site, or Platform 2, Goblin Village, a Level 2 hunting zone. A mission platform was a brand new category, and running an objective sounded a whole lot cleaner than wading into a muddy village full of goblins. The console confirmed Doomsday Town and flashed a warning to sit tight as the locomotive began to roar. The train surged forward into the spatial rift, tearing through reality as the world dissolved into fractured purple light. We broke through the portal into a ruined modern city, where the console gave us a 4-hour timer and stamped the platform as dangerous. The train hissed to a halt under a blazing sun, illuminating shattered streets painted in dried blood and choked with crushed cars. I fished out a bronze train coin and reluctantly dropped it into Wally Coin's slot to get him moving. The little guy trundled out through the collector hatch, and I just hoped some local monstrosity did not snap him up as a chew toy. Looking through the window, I spotted a withered corpse slumped on the pavement clutching a backpack with a ragged parchment note fluttering in the breeze. I ran a quick gear check: food, water, slung marksman rifle, dark light pistol, dagger, and my freshly sublimated ceramic vest tailored into a snug tactical fit. I hit the door release, stepped out onto the cracked asphalt, and locked the train behind me. A blast of sweltering heat slammed into my face, carrying the rank stench of rotten fish and sour spoiled bread. I walked over to the corpse and used my rifle barrel to hook open the backpack, reading the courier note inside. Final plea from a dying Run Corporation courier, begging whoever found it to deliver the package to a silver shop in the southeast corner for a hefty bounty. I unzipped the pack and found a pristine birthday cake preserved in a clear box, iced with the words "Happy Birthday" and strawberry jam. Alongside the cake sat an intricate mechanical Run courier medal and a town map with a bright red waypoint stamped on the silver shop. I pocketed the parcel and followed the map through silent, sun-baked streets lined with human skeletons and dark gore. A mangled hyena tearing into a corpse turned its head toward me, revealing a rotting skull and an exposed, pulsing heart, a zombie dog. The beast let out a guttural screech and charged straight at my throat. I fought down the panic and emptied 5 quick rounds from the dark light pistol, tearing the beast into bloody mincemeat when the final slug landed. The echoing gunfire would draw every predator in the burrow, so I broke into a fast sprint through side alleys to shake any trailing packs. I reached the southeast silver shop without running into more monsters, but the unnatural stillness around the storefront set my teeth on edge. The rusty roller shutter rattled upward a couple inches, and I instantly leveled my marksman rifle right at the dark gap. Terrified voice shouted from the darkness, pleading with me not to pull the trigger because he was still human. I flashed the mechanical Run courier medal in the sunlight, declaring that I was finishing the delivery for their fallen runner. The shutter rolled up a bit higher, revealing a disheveled man in his 40s who chuckled nervously and invited me inside. I kept the rifle sighted on his forehead, produced the sealed birthday cake, and demanded my payment before taking a single step. The man stared at the cake with a hollow, mournful gaze, muttering that it was too late before turning around to fetch my bounty. A small wooden box slid up beneath the shutter, popping open to reveal 3 pristine bronze train coins. Seeing train coins in the hands of a wasteland native proved this cosmic currency worked across every platform in existence. I reached down to scoop up the coins. 2 filthy hands exploded from the gap and locked onto the barrel of my rifle. Sensing the violent tug on my barrel, I squeezed the trigger without hesitation. The blast blew a severed mutant arm clean through the buckled shutter, exposing a bloated, rotten monstrosity with only the remnants of a human face. The beast roared in mad grief, screaming that I was too late and cursing the courier for letting his daughter die without her cake. I kept my head, took a steady breath, and pumped 3 rapid rifle rounds straight into its chest. The slugs landed dead center, but the monster-thick mutated hide flattened the bullets like pebble strikes. A massive gray fist smashed straight into my sternum, launching me through the air like a ragdoll. I crashed onto the baking pavement with a churning stomach, but my sublimated ceramic vest took the brunt of the strike and kept my ribs in one piece. The beast charged again, bellowing that bullets were useless against its flesh. I drew the dark light pistol and unloads a rapid volley of stamina-fueled armor-piercing rounds. I told the monster to look down, and it froze in horror as smoking bullet holes riddled its entire torso. I stepped up to the collapsing beast, leveled the glowing pistol at its temple, and put a final slug through its skull. That explained the empty streets. This apex mutant had claimed the entire block as its personal feeding ground. I picked up the dropped birthday cake, checked the seal, and scooped the 3 bronze train coins into my pack. I wrenched the metal roller shutter wide open, stepping into a surprisingly spotless silver workshop. Workbenches were lined with polished silver crossbow bolts, spearheads, and ritual crosses meant for hunting monsters. On top of a wooden cabinet, I spotted a dusty leather-bound diary. The March 1st entry mentioned finding 3 coins inside a dead train outside town, using them to order an impossible birthday cake to cure his sick daughter. By March 5th and 9th, the entries grew frantic, praying for the courier to hurry as her illness worsened by the hour. On March 11th, she passed away without tasting the cake, asking what sweetness felt like before he buried her in the yard to stop the infection. The final entry broke down into crazed scribbles and blood-red tear stains, marking where he lost his mind and turned into that beast. I walked through the back door into the overgrown courtyard and found a small, solitary tombstone standing in the weeds. I set the pristine birthday cake down in front of the headstone, fulfilling the late delivery at last. The mention of that dead train outside town lingered in my mind, making me wonder if earlier train captains had failed here long before us. Back inside, I scooped up a heavy hunting crossbow, packing all the silver bolts, ritual swords, and crosses into my bag. With my pack weighed down by heavy silver, I stepped into the street as the departure timer ticked to 35 minutes. The journey back was crawling with swarms of zombie dogs, rabid zombie cats, and rotting zombie fowl. That extra hour from my train upgrade proved to be a lifesaver, giving me all the time I needed to sneak around the horde without firing a shot. I reached the train in one piece and unloaded the heavy silver haul onto the locomotive workbench, while Wally was still out searching. The system identified the loot as Level 2 Mithril crossbow bolts, a Level 2 Mithril cross, and a Level 2 Mithril ritual sword that inflicted permanent wounds on vampires. I recycled the remaining scrap silverware in the processing table, melting it down into 10 solid kilograms of pure mithril metal. I channeled sublimation into the silver cross, burning my stamina down to 55 to forge the Level 3 Sanctuary Mithril cross. I was no marksman with a crossbow or a duelist with a sword, so I mounted the Holy Cross on the locomotive bulkhead to ward off darkness. I checked the trading platform and was pleasantly surprised to find that my food and water listing had actually sold for a shiny train coin. I chewed on a sweet slice of white forest fruit, tossing the new coin in my hand as I opened the global chat. The live headcount was down to 7,825, revealing that more than 1,000 captains vanished at Stop 3. Basic food, clean water, and wound medicine were still impossible luxuries for the starving majority, leaving almost no one with the strength to upgrade their trains. Survivors in the chat were swapping horror stories about Station 3, terrified by spider caves while others barely survived wild dogs. A player bragged about butchering dog meat with a rifle bought from Boss Yi, wondering why I had not bragged about hitting level 2 yet. A random follower called me short-sighted, claiming his big brother Li Shaoxing was about to show everyone what a real level 2 train looked like. The name Li Shaoxing rang a bell. He was the ore hoarder who promised to upgrade within 3 stops. Right on cue, Li Shaoxing posted his level 2 train stats, inviting anyone holding train coins to join his new alliance for free food and water. The chat room erupted into pure madness, with hundreds of desperate captains begging Li Shaoxing to carry them to safety. One panicked survivor started crying in the thread, begging for a refund after realizing they had traded away their precious train coin for a meal. I tuned out the alliance drama and focused straight on Li Shaoxing's screenshot of his level 2 upgrade catalog. His menu offered a basic carriage, an automatic fishing rod blueprint, a minimal daily meal plan, and the standard 1-hour dock extension. 1 and 4 were identical to mine, proving that carriage expansions and extra station time were hardwired into every level 2 upgrade pool. The basic food plan was useless to me, but an automatic fishing rod was pretty neat if a future stop turned out to be an ocean. With Crossroads of Fate giving me half an hour of advance intel before every station, I could grab specialized tools whenever the situation actually called for them. My coin pouch was finally healthy again, sitting on 4 train coins after collecting from the silver shop monster. If Wally managed to track down the platform chests before departure, my upgrade fund would look even better. A mechanical rattle broke the silence as Wally trundled back up the intake ramp, clutching a dark red candy box in his grabber claws. Deep animal fang punctures were gouged right into Wally's matte black alloy chassis. I looked out the side window to find a dozen zombie hounds and limping mutant humanoids trailing the little guy back to the train. I gave the robot a helpless tap on the head, scolding him for bringing a whole horde home. Wally tilted his cameras up and offered the rusty candy box, which the system identified as a level 2 treasure chest. I took the chest with a grin, completely unbothered by the approaching monsters when sitting beneath a level 4 automated defense tower. The moment the horde crossed the 100-meter line, the red eye on the locomotive roof ignited and locked them in bright targeting circles. 5 marksman rifle barrels swung out through the armored turret's slits, tracking the weak points of every beast in range. In less than 10 seconds, a storm of automated gunfire ripped the hounds and humanoid mutants to shreds. I munched on a sweet white forest fruit, watching the timer tick down to 8 minutes as the gunfire echoed across the ruins. More monsters swarmed from every corner of town, but the sentry wiped them out with effortless, surgical headshots. The turret had got to aim, making my own shooting look like amateur hour. The dock timer struck 1 second, and the locomotive surged forward right as the last few stragglers lunged for the wheels. We tore through the spatial rift, leaving Doomsday Town behind as the dark nocturnal wasteland stretched out before us once more. A loud chime rang through the cabin, announcing all survivors had cleared Platform 3 and unlocking in-station trade restrictions for good. The system announced that rookie protection was officially over, throwing everyone straight into full survival mode. The system warned that trains traveling under 30 kilometers an hour at night would enter a dangerous state, urging everyone to upgrade immediately. The chat room exploded into pure hysteria over nighttime wilderness monsters and sluggish train speeds. Desperate captains cried about trading away all their building materials for food, frantically beggingly shouting for upgrade scraps. A few sharp survivors noticed the global broadcast was an hour late, deducing that someone had already purchased the dock extension perk. People argued whether an upgrade was even possible at Stop 1, pointing out that in-platform trading had been locked back then. The lobby finally realized that despite Li Shaoxing boasting, a true phantom powerhouse was quietly dominating the tracks far ahead of everyone else. The chat room was blowing up with panic and noise, but I couldn't care less. My settlement screen tallied up 11 regular zombies and 28 zombie hounds killed, locking in a clean A rating. Then the system tossed out a hidden quest completion for liberating the town, rewarding me with a train car exchange coupon. Turns out the mission platform actually paid off, so I reached down and patted Wally on his dented iron head. The ticket in my hand had a neat little carriage drawing on it, and after living in luxury with the climate car, I was ready for an upgrade. I triggered sublimation, and the basic coupon morphed into a special level 2 carriage ticket, and the golden ticket dissolved into midair flames. The system logged it as a low-tier storage car, packing 48 separate units with unlimited item stacking, strictly no living creatures allowed. This was massive. When I first started, wood and iron were piled everywhere, leaving me zero room to even lie down. One upgrade wasn't enough. I decided to push my luck and sublimate it again. Right on cue, a heavy steel train car dropped out of empty air, slamming onto the rails and locking tight against my train. I stepped inside and found 48 metallic locker units neatly lined up along both walls. I activated sublimation, and my stamina dumped from 55 to 30 while my mental power tanked down to 55. The cost had more than doubled, draining 50 full points to reach Tier 3, but the payoff in my eyes was worth every drop of sweat. The new panel popped up with 51 units, 0 item decay, and 3 special slots that I could access remotely from anywhere. Follow the captain and take whatever you want whenever you want. That was not just extra storage, that was basically a personal pocket dimension. I immediately loaded several white forest fruits into the first remote slot. I walked back to the locomotive cabin, tapped the empty air with a thought, and a cold, juicy white forest fruit materialized right in my palm. Talk about hitting the jackpot. I took a bite to get my stamina back and started clearing out the cabin, dumping every stray pile of lumber and metal into the normal storage lockers. For the remaining 2 remote slots, I packed one with spare bullets and the other with fresh drinking water. Exploring platforms on foot was going to be a breeze now. Next up was the level 2 treasure chest Wally had hauled back. Level 3 to 4 took 55 points, and 1 to 2 took 37. Jumping from level 2 to 3 would probably cost at most 40 points. I gritted my teeth and triggered sublimation. My stamina plummeted to 20 and my mental power crashed down to 20, triggering frantic red warnings about exhaustion and sanity loss. My eyelids felt like lead and I was breathing hard, but I forced my eyes open to check the upgraded chest. I popped the latch and let the level 3 chest open. It dropped 6 train coins, a level 3 zombie slayer weapon, 3 vials of viral serum, and a windproof lighter. The zombie slayer was a motorized chainsaw sword packing a triple damage bonus against zombies. The serum and lighter were pretty self-explanatory, but decent to have on hand. Those 6 extra coins pushed my stash up to 10. At this stage, nobody was touching my wealth, and I was going to buy every single upgrade the next station offered. But before anything else, I desperately needed to crash. Stamina sitting at rock bottom was a kind of misery I had never felt before. While I was out cold, the chat room was turning into a bloodbath of panic buying. Everyone was scrambling to upgrade before the deadline, but only a fraction had the resources to pull it off. Someone realized the train broadcast only required 30 kilometers an hour, while a full train upgrade hit 40. Upgrading just the wheels could pass the speed test for a fraction of the metal. The moment that trick leaked, metal and mechanical parts became pure gold. It blew up the long-term upgrade costs, but when life is on the line, nobody cares about efficiency. Over on his train, Li Shaoxin was staring down his console with a dark look, completely baffled that someone had beat him to the punch. His talent was resource radar, pinpointing metals and parts before every stop. It had taken him 3 full platforms to scrape together what he needed, and he could not fathom who outpaced him. Gunfire shattered the silence outside, tearing me straight out of a dead sleep. I rubbed my eyes and looked out the glass, only to see dozens of glowing scarlet eyes stalking my train through the black wilderness. That horrifying sight woke me up faster than a bucket of ice water. I sprinted to the main dashboard and found the automated security protocols already humming. Then it clicked. This was the exact night hazard the system radio had warned us about after the 3rd station. The scanner tagged them as guerrilla moonwolves, clocking a pursuit speed of 25 kilometers per hour. I let out a quiet breath. As long as your train stayed above 30 kilometers an hour, these things could not touch you. My level 2 engine was cruising comfortably at 40, leaving the pack eating gravel and the dust. I splashed cold water over my face and stepped into the draft, checking the clock as it hit 1:44 in the morning. I opened the global chat, and the survivor tally made my stomach drop. 4,130 left out of. We had nearly 8,000 people alive during the day. In just a few hours of sleep, almost 4,000 had vanished. A cold sweat broke across my back as the death counter kept ticking down in real time. The wilderness at night was far more ruthless than any platform. If your train could not push past 30 kilometers an hour, you were just a boxed meal on wheels. 3 stops was barely enough time for most people to reach level 2. Surviving tonight was the real entrance exam. Hiding in your cabin was a death sentence. You either scavenged every platform dry and forced every upgrade, or you died. A private chat alert popped up on my screen from Shangguaningsue, asking if I was still alive. I replied that I just woke up and asked what she needed. She cut straight to the point. She was out of bullets. I turned her down flat because my own stockpile was running thin. That 3rd platform massacre alone ate through nearly 70 rounds, leaving me with barely 300 bullets to my name. She asked if I had a bullet crafting blueprint, and when I said no, she signed off without another word. Dealing with her was always painless. No begging, no drama, just clean business. I pulled up my status interface, showing my stamina back at 82 and my mental power sitting at 110, stopped midair. The mental power cap used to be 80. But it had suddenly jumped to 110. Draining my stats to rock bottom before passing out had cracked open my mental capacity. More mental power meant bigger upgrades, and 3 stops in, my train was overdue for its next sublimation. I pressed both hands against the console, channeling sublimation until raw energy flooded through the entire train frame. Stamina dropped 30 points and mental power burned 60, but the screen flashed green, train level 3 achieved. The next upgrade list was ridiculous. Wood, metal, mechanical parts, glass, gold, mithril, and something called a flame stone. A golden achievement banner popped up, rewarding me with a captain module card for breaking the fastest level 3 upgrade record. Level 1 to 2 cost 30 points, but this jump devoured 90. If the cost kept tripling, level 4 would demand a terrifying toll. I had mithril and could probably trade for gold, but that flame stone was a total mystery to me. The upgrade pushed top speed from 40 to 60 kilometers an hour, while the wheels and armor hardened to level 3 durability. Then the upgrade shop opened up with 4 juicy options priced in train coins. A level 3 bullet blueprint and a generator blueprint. It was like Christmas came early. I thought 10 coins made me rich, but buying everything would take 14. The off-station module caught my eye first, letting the train depart a full hour before the mandatory docking countdown ended. I dropped 8 train coins to snap up the module, the bullet blueprint, and the extra docking hour. The level 3 bullet blueprint produced 100 rounds per batch using 3 kilos of metal and 500 grams of gunpowder. Metal was easy, but gunpowder on the market was practically non-existent, so crafting would have to wait. I channeled sublimation into the off-station module, burning another chunk of stamina and mental power. The basic perk transformed into a VIP pass, letting me fire up the engine and leave platforms whenever I wanted after just 3 hours. Upgrading to VIP status gave me total freedom over my docking schedule. Then there was the record-breaking reward, the Train Captain module card. Unlike the standard special cards, this one was blood red with an abstract eyeball etched onto its face. Both my stamina and mental power were completely tapped out, so I forced down the urge to use it right away. I collapsed onto the cold steel floor of the train, unable to take another step. Ever since I landed in this world, I had been running on fumes, but at least that made sleeping through a nightmare wasteland easy. Clutching that red module card in my hand, I drifted straight into a deep sleep. While I slept, terror gripped the global chat as survivors were relentlessly hunted through the dark. People were screaming in the feed, terrified because some of the beasts were sprinting faster than 30 kilometers an hour. The 30-kilometer mark was just a baseline. True safety only began once you hit level 2 and pushed 40. Some cursed their lack of materials, while others thanked their lucky stars for buying one of my guns to survive. Despair settled in as people realized this was only night 1, dreading what the 4th stop had waiting for them. At 6:30 on the dot, the train announcement system blared back to life. The radio announced that the first night had ended, reporting only 3,825 survivors left. Then came the hammer. The next night survival event was 3 days away, and anything moving under 40 kilometers an hour would be destroyed. The broadcast signed off with a polite little reminder to stay safe, which only made the threat feel colder. The math was brutal. Upgrade your train to level 2 within 3 stops, or get purged on the tracks. The chat room descended into pure hysteria over how impossible finding wood and parts would be on deadly platforms. Terrified Alliance members flooded Li Shaoxing with messages, begging for help and throwing their train coins at him. Li Shaoxing just grinned at his console, knowing his resource radar talent made gathering basic materials child's play. He brushed off whoever beat him to the upgrade as a fluke. In his eyes, his talent made him the only true chosen one. He typed a reassuring message back to the group, promising to carry everyone through their first train upgrade. Then he wondered about Yi Qian, guessing the guy who sold all those guns had to be the one competing with him. He realized they were not even added yet, so he tossed out a friend request to give the gun seller a shot at joining him. The request went through and sat completely ignored in the void. I woke up with my back screaming in protest after sleeping on the iron deck until 8:30 in the morning. I retrieved a white forest fruit to snack on, splashed water on my face, and gave the sapling a quick drink. The 40-kilometer warning for the next night was completely irrelevant to me since my engine was already hitting 60. I cracked the window open and a sudden wall of freezing air hit me right in the chest. The sunny wilderness had vanished, replaced by heavy storm clouds that smothered the sun and suffocated the sky. I shut the window and turned my attention back to the blood-red card in my right hand. My stamina was at 82 and mental power was sitting at 110. More than enough to work with. I whispered the command in my head and let sublimation wash over the crimson card. 30 points of mental power vanished instantly, evolving it into an advanced module card. I activated it on the spot and unlocked trial by gunfire. The perk granted complete mastery over every firearm, letting me burn mental power to fire tracking bullets that dealt bonus damage based on how guilty my target was. I drew my blacklight pistol, and the awkwardness in my grip completely vanished. The weapon felt like a natural extension of my arm. Unlocking sharpshooter reflexes changed everything. If another pack of zombies tried to corner me, I would not need to run anymore. With the upgrade rush settled, I grabbed a fruit and opened my private inbox to see if anyone was trading blueprints or train coins. A pending notification from Li Shaoxing popped up, inviting me to join his so-called alliance. His little guild sounded shaky at best, but the guy had train coins, so I accepted the request just to keep business options open. Over in his workshop car, Li Shaoxing saw the invite go through while haggling over fishing gear with other survivors. I messaged him right away, asking if he had any completed fishing rods for sale. Instead of answering, he dodged the question and tried digging into whether I had completed my train upgrade yet. I did not feel like playing 20 questions. I just repeated my request and asked for the price and materials. He launched into a massive pitch, promising free rations and gear if I joined his alliance and supplied his members with guns to build a superpower. I chewed my fruit and gave him a blunt ultimatum: sell the rod or drop the deal. When his chat went dead, I wasted zero time waiting and typed fishing rods straight into the public search bar. I found a guy selling machine rods from the first stop, pinged him, and got an immediate yes. I sent over 20 mechanical parts and a biscuit, locking in the trade for a motorized fishing rod. It was fully automated with mechanical reels, leagues better than some flimsy wooden stick. I triggered sublimation, turning it into a temptation rod that drew fish straight to the hook with zero bait required. A friend request popped up from the seller, Zhao Lin, and I hit accept without hesitation. Honest trading partners were rare in this world. A deafening crack of thunder ripped through the sky at 12:30 as the clouds broke into a violent downpour. The speakers chimed in, warning every captain that the upcoming platform was locked into a thunderstorm zone and advising rain gear. It was wild that wilderness weather could actually bleed straight into the platform instances. Then the crossroads of fate triggered, presenting two choices: Goblin Tribe, a level 3 hunting platform, and Quiet Rain Manor, a level 3 mission platform. The train hit tier 3, the platform scaled right alongside it. Goblins showed up again. 4 stops and 3 of them had goblins on the menu. I was not suicidal enough to jump into a level 3 hunting platform with pure combat trial tags. Quiet Rain Manor had its own risks, but my gear was built for mission objectives, so I locked in platform 2. The train surged into spatial void, surrounded by a swirling curtain of black rain and rolling thunder. We docked at Quiet Rain Manor, greeted by a 5-hour countdown and a stark red danger tag. I looked through the glass and saw we had stopped along a desolate, cracked mountain road swallowed in pitch-black rain. A flash of lightning ripped across the dark, illuminating a smoking police cruiser surrounded by bodies and uniforms. Dead cops and a wrecked cruiser felt uncomfortably close to another zombie outbreak. I grabbed one of my last 2 train coins and slotted it into Wally to boot him up for scouting. Wally rolled out into the dark rain, wobbling along the cracked asphalt to scout the perimeter. I opened up my remote storage slots. Alongside the fruit and ammo, I kept 3 vials of sublimated viral serum. The new Bless Virus Serum was a universal cure-all. It could purge zombie infections, vampire transformations, ghost corrosion, and actively heal physical damage. I geared up heavy. Tactical vest, assault rifle, pistols, daggers, a mithril cross, and a heavy waterproof raincoat to cap it off. Fully armed, I pressed the door release button and stepped out into the pouring rain. I pushed through the driving storm and walked straight toward the smoking police cruiser. I checked the bodies sprawled in the gravel, making sure none of them were twitching back to life before I started digging through their pockets. Beside one of the officers, I found a small handheld voice recorder half submerged in the mud. The audio clicked on with a disgruntled officer complaining about driving 3 days out to Mount DeVille just because a wealthy tycoon named Ravi had dropped dead at his manor. Ravi was the department's biggest financial donor, so the chief had ordered them to find the killer no matter what to secure his daughter's future funding. The cop chuckled on tape, admitting they would just pin the murder on the maid if they could not catch the real culprit, laughing that it was not their first time framing someone. A classic murder mystery setup, but I knew the platform system never kept things that simple. I searched the wreck and pulled out 2 police service pistols, 4 loaded magazines, and a heavy stun baton. Low-tier gear was useless to me, so I tossed the weapons into my train car, grabbed the dead sheriff's badge and ID, and started hiking up the mountain. 15 minutes up the road, I found myself standing in front of the colossal black iron gates of Quiet Rain Manor. A terrified security guard stumbled out of the gatehouse, frantically demanding to know who was out there. I flashed the sheriff badge through the rain, and the stormy gloom did all the work convincing him I was the law. He swung the gate wide and dragged me inside, sobbing uncontrollably as he begged me to catch the patriarch's killer. His display of loyalty was almost comical, so I cut through the tears and asked how Ravi had died. He claimed the boss died 4 nights ago, leaving only the son, daughter, butler, maid, and himself, immediately pointing fingers at the maid. I stopped in my tracks and eyed the guard. Ravi died 4 days ago, but the police call only went out 3 days ago. That left a whole missing day. The guards scrambled to explain that torrential storms had knocked out power and phone lines all week, leaving them with just one working call before getting completely isolated. Classic Stormy Lodge murder mystery trope. I had played enough tabletop games back in the day to recognize the locked room setup instantly. But this was a level 3 mission platform. A level 2 zone threw full zombie hordes at me, so a simple whodunit made 0 sense. The calmer the surface looked, the worse the trap underneath had to be. I rested my hand against my holster and kept my guard high. Just as we reached the heavy castle doors, a piercing shriek ripped through the stormy sky above us. A brilliant bolt of lightning cracked across the dark, illuminating a woman falling from the tower and slamming into the grass with a sickening thud. Crimson blood pooled into the grass, mixing with the pouring rain until red runoff streams cut across the mud. I looked straight up at the shattered window she fell from and caught sight of a grotesque, inhuman silhouette slinking back into the dark. The mithril cross hanging under my raincoat flared with sudden, searing heat against my skin. Holy warding never lies. The security guard lost his mind, screeching that the maid was dead on the ground. An old butler with a grey beard sprinted out of the castle, but the moment the guard saw him, he screamed murder and bolted into the black woods. The butler watched him vanish with a weary sigh, introducing himself as the housekeeper while eyeing my young face and lamenting another fresh corpse. I pressed him on what he meant by another death. Besides Ravi and this maid, who else was dead? Without answering, the butler casually grabbed the maid's corpse by the shoulders and dragged her over to a line of open grave pits on the lawn. 5 grave pits were lined up in the dirt, 3 of them already packed with dead bodies. The butler just gave me a sickening, wry smile. I followed him into the castle foyer, but the freezing chill never lifted. If anything, it felt like dozens of unseen eyes were burning holes through the back of my skull. He asked if I wanted tea or coffee. In a haunted death trap like this, I played it safe and asked for plain boiled water. He brought out black coffee anyway. I left the cup untouched on the table and demanded the full story behind the slaughter. In the flickering candlelight, his bloodshot eyes looked unhinged as he listed the timeline. The daughter murdered in the attic on day 2, the son dead on day 3, and the maid today. He dug 5 graves knowing everyone was marked for slaughter by the manor's curse, warning me to turn around and run while I still could. My murder investigation had officially spiraled into an occult nightmare. I tightened my grip on the mithril cross, thankful I had holy gear on my side. If everyone was getting picked off day by day, I asked him why the hell he never just walked out the front door. The old man gave a hollow, despairing chuckle. An invisible barrier had locked the gates tight, and he offered to dig a 6th grave just for me. I leaned across the table and told him to explain this curse from the beginning. The old man looked baffled that a kid my age was not shaking in his boots, glanced toward the wooden stairs, and told him that beside being the sheriff, I did part-time work as a pastor. I pulled the mithril sanctuary cross from my coat, and pure holy radiance washed across the room, driving back every creeping shadow. The butler rubbed his eyes like he was seeing a ghost, falling to his knees and shouting praise to God. With my holy credentials established, he spilled the truth about the first manor owner, a sadist who framed and tortured his innocent maid to death. A storm sealed the estate right after her execution, and when the clouds finally parted, everyone inside had been butchered to the bone. For 30 straight years, the manor changed hands over a dozen times, and every single buyer met a gruesome end on a rainy night. Ravi was a cheapskate who thought he snagged a tax-free bargain, totally ignoring the rumors until the trap snapped shut. I asked where the original maid died, and the butler pointed straight toward the highest clock tower in the castle. A classic earthbound spirit holding a grudge. As long as my cross could vaporize the ghost, this mission was in the bag. I grabbed an oil lamp and followed the butler up the spiral stone stairs, accompanied only by the sound of leaking rain. The moment we reached the clock tower landing, the cross in my grip began burning with intense, protective heat. The old man froze at the threshold, so I shoved the door open and stepped into the dark bell chamber alone. A freezing gust slammed into me as a vengeful shadow locked on and charged straight for my throat. The mithril sanctuary cross erupted in a blinding flash of holy fire, and a shriek tore through the belfry as the ghost vaporized into thin air. A metallic clang echoed against the floorboards, and a smooth, translucent glass-like skull bounced to a stop right at my toes. That was it? I pinched my thigh until it stung just to check if I was hallucinating. I searched the rafters and corners for several minutes, but the room was dead quiet. The boss was genuinely gone. A level 3 zone was supposed to be a death trap, but my sublimated Holy Cross turned a lethal boss fight into a complete joke. I scooped up the translucent crystal skull. I had no idea what it did yet, but good loot never gets left behind. I pushed the door open and stepped out onto the landing, scaring the waiting butler half to death with the skull in my hand. I told him to relax, showing off the skull as proof that the manor curse had been crushed for good. Tears poured down the old man's face as he broke down in prayers, thanking me over and over for saving their lives. We walked back down to the main hall while the thunderstorm outside kept roaring, proving the bad weather was just natural mountain climate. Less than an hour had passed and the barrier was gone. Leaving early was an option, but walking away from a rich man's manor empty-handed would be criminal. White forest fruits were fine for survival, but my stomach was screaming for real meat, fresh eggs, and home-cooked meals. The butler led me into the private study, unlocked a heavy wall safe, and pulled out a flawless red gemstone as my reward. He explained that the master bought it in his youth as a priceless treasure, telling me to take whatever else caught my eye since the manor had no living master. I weighed the stone in my hand, finding it strangely cool like a chunk of ice, and asked if I could raid the kitchen for food and water. I raided the manor kitchen, stuffing my pack to bursting with fresh steaks, cartons of eggs, and crisp vegetables from the massive commercial fridge. I hauled the heavy haul down the mountain road through the downpour, dumping everything into the train's storage carriage. I turned it into a 20-minute relay, sprinting up to strip the pantries bare and running back down to stash the loot. The butler was busy tying up the raving security guard in the foyer when I walked right back through the front doors for another run. Everything is fine, I told him with a straight face. God is just hungry, and he told me to bring back some snacks. I hauled load after load down the mountain until the kitchen was nearly stripped of meat and seasonings. I left some rations behind on purpose since 2 living souls still had to survive in that manner. On my final walk out, the old butler called out to me from the wrought iron gate. He brought the tied-up security guard along and bowed low, thanking me for saving their lives. He handed over an ornate wooden box tied with a satin ribbon, terrified I might leave before he could thank me. I cracked the wooden lid open and blinked in surprise. He explained they were trading currency for the Run Corporation, 3 rare coins the late patriarch spent years collecting. Inside the box sat 3 genuine train coins. But the name Run Corporation caught my attention way more than the money. That company was not just flavor text in Doomsday Town. Their reach seemed to span across multiple platforms. Back inside my train, I stripped off the wet raincoat and grinned at the mountain of steaks, vegetables, and cookware filling the cabin. I set up a charcoal grill on the steel floor, dropped a thick marbled steak onto the grate, and prepped my first real hot dinner in days. While the meat sizzled, I set empty drums outside to catch rainwater and sat down to review my loot. The tally brought up a level 3 purified earthbound item and a level 1 luminous ruby. The ruby was basically cosmetic paint currency, which sounded completely useless to me. I picked up the spectral skull and triggered sublimation, watching my stamina dip to 49 and my mental power plunge down to 50. The skull completely lost its bone structure, fusing into a perfectly smooth, radiant level 4 pure earthbound stone. The new level 4 stone automatically purged negative debuffs on the captain and neutralized any evil spirit below its tier. That meant any supernatural platform up to level 5 was practically a walk in the park. Best of all, I could feel its growth ceiling had not capped out yet. It could still be sublimated again down the road. With 42 minutes left on the clock, Wally crawled in through the lower hatch hauling a blood-stained level 3 treasure chest. Good job, Wally. I patted his iron chassis and promised him an extra dose of maintenance oil later. Wally rolled straight back to his docking port to enter sleep mode. With all the loot secured and the chest in hand, there was zero reason to linger, so I initiated early departure. The engine roared to life, shooting past the dimensional void and bursting out of the thunderstorm back into the open wilderness. The system broadcast chimed in, announcing all survivors had cleared Platform 4 and unlocking global chat. Then came the grim news: the hidden new player protection module was officially offline. From here on out, monsters would actively hunt and attack trains during broad daylight. The chat room exploded into screams and fury over losing the only safe hours we had left. People argued over why the broadcast took so long, refusing to believe anyone had actually built a level 3 train already. Desperate survivors started begging for bullets in the chat, with one guy offering roasted insect meat and swearing it packed as much protein as real beef. 4 stations in, the blind panic was slowly turning into cold numbness. The survivors were finally learning to swallow the brutality of this world. The death toll after Platform 4 sat at 3,455. Less than 1,000 dead this round, which passed for good news out here. I tuned out the chat noise and focused entirely on the blood-stained treasure chest sitting on my workbench. I unleashed sublimation, burning 30 stamina and 25 mental power to evolve the chest straight into Tier 4. I popped a juicy piece of sizzling steak into my mouth, wiped the grease off my fingers, and reached for the latch. The chest popped open in a dazzling pillar of light, showering me with 8 heavy golden train coins. The level 4 chest dropped 8 train coins, a monitor blueprint, a security bracelet, a clockwork monkey bomb blueprint, and a jagged card fragment. 3 Tier 4 items and 2 full blueprints made this haul leagues better than my last unboxing. The monitor blueprint demanded metal, wood, mechanical parts, and 30 electronic components to wire up an automated train-wide intrusion alarm killer facility for train defense, but those 30 electronic components were going to take some serious trading to track down. I picked up the level 4 security bracelet. Short description: massive value, it tanks 1 fatal blow and shatters. I snapped it onto my right wrist and felt an instant wash of relief. You cannot put a price on an extra life out here. Next was the clockwork monkey bomb blueprint, a walking toy explosive that marched to a designated target and blew itself to pieces. 400 grams of gunpowder for 1 bomb when 100 bullets took 500. Having awesome blueprints without raw powder was pure torture. I set the blueprints aside and picked up the last reward, a heavy black and gold card fragment. The tooltip labeled it a blasphemy card fragment, requiring 3 pieces to synthesize into a complete card with unknown effects. 3 Tier 4 chests just for a shot at combining 1 card. The system was playing a very long game with this thing. I opened the public trading platform to hunt for gunpowder, but finding anything was a nightmare of tiny scraps and insane scalper prices. Not stupid. I closed the market and decided to throw a direct bounty straight into the global chat room. My offer was simple: 200 grams of gunpowder for a choice of a military biscuit, a bottle of clean water, or a fresh tomato. I dropped a full train coin to pin the message right at the very top so nobody alive could miss it. I also put up a listing for electronic components, trading a bottle of water and a military biscuit for every 10 parts. Fresh water was not super scarce after the storm, especially with Shangguan Yingxue flooding the market, though I wondered if her supply was recycled shower runoff. Still, pairing clean water with a sweet military biscuit gave survivors a whole day of calories and a tiny hit of comfort. And tomatoes were pure luxury. Train life was basically a sailing voyage, and without fresh produce, scurvy was going to catch up with people real fast. The chat room lost its mind over the pin post, screaming about someone wasting a whole train coin just for visibility. Then they saw my name. The guy who sold rifles back at Stop 1 obviously was not hurting for cash. The real shocker was the tomatoes. One guy offered gunpowder he stripped off a corpse just to get real fruit back on his tongue. People started arguing over whether tomatoes were fruits or vegetables, while half the room begged me to sell them firearms. Smart survivors jumped on the offer, filling all 10 orders and landing me 2 solid kilograms of gunpowder. I mixed the powder with metal ingots, forging my very first batch of 100 level 3 bullets. They materialized right on the table, distinctly heavier and denser than the cheap ammo I started with. I racked around into my blacklight pistol and aimed straight at a pile of scrap iron to test the kick. The shot tore through the metal pile and blew it to pieces. Low-tier rounds just poked holes, but this was pure destruction. Loving the firepower, I burned through the rest of the gunpowder to manufacture 999 level 3 rounds. I dumped all 999 bullets into my remote storage slot, giving me an instant personal armory wherever I walked. My chat console started flickering with private pings from all 3 people on my friends list. Li Shaoxing sent a delusion-fueled pitch, begging to team up his gunpowder with my gunsmithing so we could become the kings of all train captains. I ignored his middle school fantasy and checked Zhao Lin, who asked straight up to buy a gun with cold, hard train coins. Now that was a real trading partner. Then came Shangguan Yingxue, asking me flat out what level my train had reached. I paused. People were barely scraping together level 2 after stop 4, so they naturally assumed I was in the same boat. Whether they knew or not did not change a thing. I had zero reason to fear anyone in this world. I typed out a casual 3-word reply and sent it off, just promoted. Answer left Shangguan Yingxue completely silent on the other end. She typed back asking if I used the gunpowder for bullets and whether I had any to sell. The ink was barely dry on my bullet crafting and I already had a buyer. As the only other captain to reach level 2, she had actual spending power and zero drama. I told her I could sell, but I did not want water or basic materials. The price was strictly 1 train coin for 30 rounds. She pushed back immediately, asking if I was trying to rob her blind. I told her my ammo was worth every penny and sent over the spec sheet. Her eyes went wide the second she saw the level 3 badge, muttering in disbelief at whether I had actually broken past tier 2 already. She was smart enough not to pry into my secrets, keeping her composure and countering with 50 rounds for a single coin. 50 was too high, so I threw out a middle ground of 40 bullets. When you offer a fair compromise, most people take the bite. She took the 40 rounds, but added a catch. She needed a replacement gun since her old rifle was banged up. Giving away free weapons was out of the question, but I pulled up a screenshot of an exquisite marksman rifle to see if she wanted an upgrade. The rifle looked leagues deadlier than standard scrap guns, and her immediate reply asked how much I wanted for it. I offered the rifle for 2 train coins and threw in 10 extra bullets, rounding her total package to 50 rounds for 3 coins. She looked down at the exact 3 coins in her hand, wondering if I had somehow bugged her cabin to know her exact balance. She gritted her teeth and locked in the trade. I asked her if she could build me a wooden bed with her blueprint using my own wood as a return favor for the extra ammo. She took the 10 kilos of timber, gave a defeated sigh, and crafted the bed to finish the deal. I made out like a bandit, walking away with 3 train coins and a real bed to sleep in. Giving up that marksman rifle did not bother me at all. With trial by gunfire, my pistol could snipe across the map anyway. Collapsing onto that wooden mattress for the first time in days instantly lifted my mood. That trade bumped my stash up to 14 train coins. I sublimated my spare rifles to tier 2 and sold them to Zhao Lin for 2 coins each, swapping some low-grade ammo for 5 fresh fish. That brought my total wealth up to 16 train coins. Right on time, my buy order for electronic components finally cleared. I used the parts to craft the level 4 monitor and mounted the surveillance station right in my 3rd carriage. Just like the warning device, I could not sublimate it yet until I figured out how to push past the tier 4 cap. I dropped 6 train coins into the system store to unlock the level 3 energy generation unit blueprint. It only needed 50 mechanical parts and 40 kilos of metal, which was way cheaper than I expected. I hammered the materials together and built a diesel generator that stood as tall as my calf. The market only had 1 tiny barrel of diesel fuel, which was nowhere near enough for long-term power. I was not about to rely on rare diesel, so I slapped the generator with sublimation. It evolved into an omnivorous power generator, capable of devouring metal, wood, coal, or oil to produce electricity. Buying oil was off the table. I chucked a piece of scrap wood into the intake, and the power reserve meter ticked upward. I bought a batch of electric light bulbs and strung them across the carriages, banishing the dark for good. On my 4th night in this world, I finally fell asleep in a proper bed under warm electric light, feeling like a normal human being. The wilderness rolled by in total quiet. No monsters scratched at the walls, and the thunder quietly died out as the storm rolled away. Bright morning sunlight beamed through the glass, warming my face and waking me up. I stretched my arms, grabbed a white forest fruit to snack on, and walked over to the locomotive. The second I stepped into the cab, a blast of suffocating heat slapped me right across the face. The system radio chimed in, announcing hot tropical winds and warning all captains to guard against heat stroke. The weather shifted again, but this time the broadcast did not mention the platforms changing with it. I ducked back into the climate-controlled car to splash cool water on my face before braving the furnace of a control room again. I pulled up the chat room, and the feed was already boiling. Everyone else had been baked awake hours before me. The chat room was screaming about 40-degree heat turning their steel-trained cars into literal baking ovens. People were panicking as the extreme temperature started continuously eating away at their stamina and mental power. I wiped the sweat from my brow, chugged a bottle of water, and pulled up my personal status window. My stamina was ticking down slightly, but my mental power had not budged. Eating all those white forest fruits was really paying off. A gunshot suddenly shattered my thoughts as the automated warning device on the roof fired. I looked through the glass and saw a pack of starving, mangy jackals sprinting alongside the tracks. They were too slow to threaten a level 3 train, but it was clear that daytime beasts spawned at random without any radio warnings. Nobody in the chat mentioned wolves, meaning daylight spawns were purely individual rolls of the dice. A private message alert chimed from Zhao Lin, asking if monsters were swarming my train as well. I glanced back at the retreating jackals and asked if she had run into trouble too. She said a flock of mutant birds dive-bombed her windshield at 35 kilometers an hour, swearing the gun I sold her was the only reason she was still breathing. I cut through the small talk and asked what she was looking to buy this time. Over in train E3-7741, Zhao Lin was dressed in light gear, sweat pouring down her wheat-toned skin as she stared at her screen in pure anxiety. Speed was life. With only 2 days before the next night survival test, nobody in their right mind was selling upgrade resources. Her talent was conservation of luck. Good fortune and terrible misfortune followed each other in a strict, unbreakable cycle. Bad luck hit stop 3, trapping her inside a bat cave for 3 hours, while good luck handed her over 100 fish and a level 1 chest with 0 bait at stop 4. But that meant stop 5 was locked into pure catastrophe. If she could not upgrade right now, she was dead meat when the night trials started. I had 0 interest in trading for fish. My storage carriage was packed with prime steak, so I turned her down flat. Zhao Lin panicked, pleading that I was the only person left with spare upgrade supplies who could keep her alive. I asked why she could not just farm materials across the next 2 platforms like everyone else. She bit the bullet and spilled her biggest secret, sending over a direct screenshot of conservation of luck. I looked at the talent interface, inspecting someone else's innate ability for the very first time. It was an abstract headache of a power, but it made her panic make total sense, so I asked for her exact shortfall. She rattled off her numbers: 38 kilos of timber, 22 kilos of metal, and 14 mechanical parts. I laid down my price, everything inside her recent Tier 1 chest, 10 fresh fish, and full visibility on her future upgrade brand. Not running a charity. I was buying a long-term stake in a unique talent for future profits. Zhao Lin jumped at the deal in pure relief, calling me a kind lifesaver and swearing she would pay me back. The system flashed, materializing a bundle of chest loot alongside 10 fresh silver fish right onto my workbench. The level 1 chest cracked open, dropping a pair of waterproof boots, some strong fishing line, and a bottle of plant nutrients. The boots and fishing line were pure junk to me, but that bottle of fertilizer caught my attention immediately. My white forest sapling took 9 whole days to fruit, and only 2 days had passed. This nutrient bottle was exactly what I needed. I channeled sublimation into the vial, burning 10 stamina to forge high-efficiency plant nutrients. The bottle still had growth potential, so I pushed sublimation a second time, draining 20 more stamina to create blessing plant elixir. I popped the stopper and poured the glowing elixir straight into the soil around the white forest tree. A brilliant white flash exploded from the planter, and the tiny sapling shot upward like a rocket, spreading massive branches right against the ceiling. Plump white forest fruits sprouted along the boughs in glowing clusters, ripening before my very eyes. I pinched my cheek in disbelief. Watching a tiny twig turn into a massive fruit-bearing tree in seconds felt unreal. The tree had evolved into a level 4 blessed variant, producing fruit that restored stamina, regenerated mental power, and granted hallucination immunity with 0 negative side effects. I picked a fruit and took a bite. The rich, sweet juice flooded my senses, tasting leagues better than the raw version. I wondered if good deeds paid off, or if I had somehow leached Zhao Lin's good luck. I made a mental note to keep my distance during her bad luck swings. I harvested 55 ripe fruits from the branches and loaded the entire batch into my remote storage slot. While everyone else was baking alive in the heat, I sat back in my 22-degree climate car, enjoying grilled meat and a beer. The only downside was the warm beer. I really needed to hunt down a refrigerator blueprint. 30 minutes before docking at the 5th stop, the crossroads of fate triggered, presenting 2 level 4 choices: Deep Bat Cave and Mystery Bell Town. 2 level 4 platforms at once felt insane. I had a creeping suspicion that Zhao Lin's bad luck had somehow rubbed off on my navigation system. Platform 1 was tagged as a slaughter station, which sounded way too close to a pure combat grinder where my gear had 0 advantage. I had cleared 2 mission platforms already, so I locked in Platform 2, Mystery Bell Town, trusting my wits over a direct bloodbath. The train surged into the spatial void, and the blinding desert sun was swallowed whole by pitch-black night. We pulled into Mystery Bell Town with a 5-hour countdown, and an explicit high-danger rating plastered across the screen. I looked through the viewport, and saw we had docked at an actual dual-track railway station beneath falling snowflakes. I dropped a train coin into Wally, sending him rolling down the ramp into the snowy dark to sniff out loot. Just as I reached for the door, crunching footsteps echoed across the platform and a young girl's voice called out for the prosecutor. I kept my hand clamped on my blacklight pistol, letting trial by gunfire plot a lethal trajectory toward the sound before she even came into view. A little girl around 11 years old stood on tiptoe outside the glass, bundled up in a thick white coat, knitted hat, and wool scarf. She spotted me inside, waving cheerfully and begging the prosecutor to hurry up and step outside because everyone was waiting. With my alarm silent and the pure earthbound stone humming peacefully on the console, I slid the steel door open. I stepped out into the cold air and asked the little girl what her name was. Her bright blue eyes lit up as she introduced herself as Tina, explaining that Sister Nun promised the prosecutor would arrive on the train to save them all. Tina looked up at me with pleading, desperate eyes, asking if I was truly the prosecutor they had been waiting for. I gave her a gentle smile and played along. Nobody else was coming on this train, so I was whoever they needed me to be. Tina cheered and jumped in the snow, telling me to follow her because the whole town was waiting. Hold on a second, I told her, pulling out a fresh white forest fruit and handing it over. She took a big bite without a trace of fear, her face lighting up as she thanked me for the treat. I checked my sidearm, slipped the Mithril Sanctuary cross around my neck, and prepared to step out into the town. I locked the carriage door behind me and cranked the intrusion alarms to maximum before turning back to Tina. "Let us go meet your people," I said, and she nodded with a cheerful hum. We stepped out into the town, blanketed in thin snow without a single street light, save for a lone lantern burning above a church in the center. The church had an unsettling silhouette that looked less like a chapel and more like a colossal locomotive standing upright. The streets were dead quiet, but I could feel countless eyes burning into us from the dark alleys, backed by eerie, muffled whispers. The platform rating had an explicit danger tag with an exclamation mark. I kept my guard high while Tina skipped ahead like a splash of color in a dead world. Tina stopped under the glowing church lantern, catching her breath and inviting the chief prosecutor inside. I walked up the white stone steps and told Tina to take the lead through the door. Tina shoved the doors open, and a flood of brilliant light poured out, revealing the hall inside. Hundreds of townspeople sat packed in the pews with their heads bowed in prayer, while a blonde nun in a black habit stood quietly before the altar. "Sister Nun," Tina shouted into the hall, "I brought Mr. Prosecutor." The prayers cut out instantly as every single head snapped upward in unison, staring right through me like hollow puppets. I flicked the safety off my blacklight pistol, locking a lethal firing arc straight onto the nun. The nun gave a gentle, reassuring smile, telling me not to be alarmed because they meant no harm. She told the congregation to keep praying so they would not frighten the prosecutor, then sent Tina to the back to prepare. Tina scampered off as the crowd dropped their heads in eerie synchronization, while the nun retrieved a small wooden box from beneath the altar. She walked toward me with steady steps, offering the container as my promised payment. "Freeze right there," I warned her, raising my gun dead at her forehead and demanding to know what was going on in this town. Completely unfazed, she knelt down, set the box on the flagstones, and opened the lid to reveal a jagged black and gold card fragment. It was unmistakable. Another piece of the blasphemy card. The nun pressed her palms together in devout prayer before the shard, declaring that only blasphemers could step foot into this world. The cross against my chest stayed cold. She was not a ghost or an undead monstrosity, but a living human being. She picked up the shard and stepped closer, calling me a train captain with a knowing smirk and asking which stop this town was for me. She actually knew about the train system. I let out a cold laugh, spun on my heels, and bolted straight for the station. The blonde nun froze in disbelief, reaching an arm out into the cold air and screaming at me not to run. Anyone who stayed in a setup that obvious was an idiot. I pushed into a full sprint across the snow-covered street. Losing her patience, the nun shrieked an order for the townspeople to hunt me down. The congregation erupted out of the church with unnatural, inhuman speed, swarming down the road like a pack of rabid hounds. They closed the distance way too fast for normal humans. Knowing I could not outrun them on foot, I spun around and fired. The nun watched from the church steps with an arrogant smirk, sneering that cheap bullets could never scratch her handcrafted puppets. Her smug grin vanished in an instant as the psychic link to her lead puppet snapped clean in half. Level 3 armor-piercing rounds turned her indestructible dolls into kindling, and with trial by gunfire, I did not even need to aim. I kept up a running retreat through the falling snow, mowing down puppets in steady rhythm as the safety of the train station came into view. A soft sigh drifted through the freezing night less than 100 meters from the station. The blonde nun appeared right in front of me without a sound, as if she had been standing there the entire time. She chuckled softly, admitting she had not been this surprised in years after watching a level 3 train captain smash her puppets to pieces. The train roof turret creaked, locking onto her with mechanical precision. Before the turret could squeeze off a single round, thick black iron chains erupted from the shadows and wrapped around the barrel, locking the mechanism tight. Shea looked amused, calling me lucky for owning an automated sentry tower this early in the game. My eye twitched. Watching my automated defenses get shut down with a flick of her wrist was not doing wonders for my confidence. I raised my hands and tried to negotiate, telling her we had no beef and offering to let her take whatever loot she wanted. She stepped closer, waving away my offer with a gentle smile and reminding me that if she wanted to kill me, I would already be in a grave. She looked me up and down, asking with a playful smirk if I was done trying to run away. Run where exactly? I sat right down in the snow, knowing when I was completely outmatched. Teleportation, puppet mastery, and shadow chains were leagues beyond my level. Even if I burned trial by gunfire, my odds of winning were practically zero. Besides, she went through all this effort to capture me in one piece. That meant I was worth more alive than dead. Good to know, she said, grabbing my hand and hauling me to my feet while introducing herself as Sister Shea. She led the way back to the church, her black boots clicking against the snowy stones while I followed like a captive guest. Back inside the cathedral, Shea walked over to the altar and offered the black and gold card fragment to me. I pointed at my own chest in disbelief, telling her that something so valuable belonged with its rightful owner. Shea chuckled, giving my shoulder a friendly pat while swearing a kind nun would never hurt a fly. She shoved the shard right into my palms anyway. I took it reluctantly, making a mental note to chuck it in a ditch the second I made it out alive. Do not even dream of tossing it away, she said, her voice dropping into pure ice. She grabbed the iron-hard head of a nearby town mascot puppet and crushed it into powder with her bare fingers. I swallowed hard. My armor-piercing bullets needed magic enchantment to punch through that material, and she turned it to dust like stale bread. I straightened my back immediately, swearing to Sister Shea that the card would never leave my sight. Shea tossed the debris aside, strolled up to the altar to retrieve her black-covered book, and casually asked what my talent was. I kept my mouth shut. Handing over my core survival secret to an unpredictable monster was not on today's agenda. She claimed she did not care about other people's business, only to pucker her lips and immediately ask again when I refused to bite. Her mood swings were all over the place, but at least it was clear she was not looking to slit my throat. An awkward silence hung thick in the air as we stood there, staring each other down under the candlelight. Shea broke the quiet in frustration, demanding to know why I was not asking how she knew about trained captains, survival runs, and talents. Curiosity killed the cat, I replied smoothly. I told her I had never been a fan of men who poked their noses into other people's business. That set her off. She teleported inches from my nose, glaring daggers into my skull. To drive the point home, she grabbed another puppet skull and obliterated it in her bare fist. Her floral perfume hit my nose, and I instantly folded, rattling off 10 questions at machine gun speed. Stop, she snapped, slapping a pale hand over my mouth to shut me up. After all that noise, she sighed. Which one do you actually want me to answer first? I shook my head in total surrender. A kind nun? More like a hair-trigger brawler. She sat cross-legged on a pew, her holy grace miraculously restored, and casually dropped that she boarded the train 20 years ago. 20 years? I stared at her youthful face, doing some very dangerous mental math on her real age. She caught my train of thought instantly, so I quickly threw out some shameless flattery about her timeless beauty. Her smile faded as she looked away, admitting she had been permanently sealed inside this isolated world. The guy who locked her away wiped this station off the network, making it impossible for high-tier allies to rescue her or low-tier rookies to stumble in. My mind clicked. Without crossroads of fate, I would have been dumped straight into that slaughter cave. Sublimation broke the rule. Shea warned me to never reveal my talent to a living soul. Envy out here is lethal, and even the worst power turns you into a target. The same went for the blasphemy card. Flaunting it meant hunters would hunt you across dimensions until you were dead or sealed away like her. I was holding a walking death flag. I looked at her, desperately wishing I could shove the cursed thing back into her hands, but her gaze made it clear there was no return. Sister Shea, I asked, leaning forward on the wooden pew. Were you part of the very first wave of survivors? Since she clearly was not going to murder me, I decided to be bold and squeeze every drop of intel out of a 20-year veteran. Not even close, she replied. Waves of survivors came long before me, but we almost never crossed paths. I frowned and asked why people from earlier batches rarely ran into each other. Shea snapped her fingers, and black shadow chains materialized in midair, twisting together into a miniature railway track. Remember, she explained, this world is infinitely large, and every single platform is its own completely different dimension. A legendary powerhouse wanted to measure the wilderness, teaming up with top captains to pool resources and push his train's speed beyond belief. She clicked her tongue in awe, recalling a speed tier so terrifying it bordered on fantasy. That guy had a module, she said, explaining that modules were high-tier magic or sci-fi systems that rarely dropped before level 5. She suddenly locked eyes with me, asking suspiciously if my pinpoint shooting came from unlocking an aim assist module early. I gave an awkward chuckle. I did unlock an upgrade module, but it was for early departures, not guns. I steered the conversation back on track, asking if that explorer ever found the edge of the world. Shea fell silent for a moment, then shook her head. He traveled at impossible speeds for an entire year without seeing a single train, until his avatar turned gray. His death was not pointless. It proved that every train captain travels through a completely separate wilderness realm. Survivors drop in once every 3 years, she added. Unless a region hits a critical population cap, you will never see another captain on the tracks. Shea pulled a brightly wrapped lollipop from the folds of her cassock, unwrapped it, popped it into her mouth, and casually offered me one. I waved my hand and politely turned it down, saying I was not hungry yet. She grinned like a brat, crunched the hard candy between her teeth, and told me she was never planning to share her last piece anyway. She pulled off her nun habit, stood up from the bench, and offered to answer one final question before wrapping things up. Before I could even speak, she whipped out a second lollipop from nowhere, peeled the wrapper in a flash, and shoved it straight into my mouth. It was sugary sweet with a cool, minty herbal kick that instantly washed away every ounce of running fatigue in my muscles. She asked how it tasted, and I pointed out that she just swore that other candy was her last one. She laughed and admitted she lied, proving once again that the prettier a woman is, the more likely she is to spin tall tales. I got down to business and asked my final question, detailing what I found in Doomsday Town and Rainy Manor, and asking if she knew about the Run Corporation. Shea tilted her head, looking genuinely puzzled at the name. She explained that over countless years of trained survival, plenty of retired veterans quit taking risks and settled down, building cross-platform organizations that inevitably bleed into different stations. She clapped her hands together, announcing that time was up and offering to show off her high-tier train. Tina jogged out from behind the altar with a bright smile, announcing that everything was ready and thanking the prosecutor for helping them. Tina skipped over and took my hand, shaking it warmly in a sweet farewell. Shea casually dropped that Tina was also a puppet, proudly calling her the greatest masterpiece she had ever built. I rubbed my eyes in total disbelief, reaching out to gently poke Tina's squishy, lifelike cheek. A dark shudder ran down my spine as I wondered if she had captured a living child and refined her into a puppet demon. I decided to mind my manners. I was far too handsome to end up as some witch's stuffed mannequin. A heavy mechanical tremor rumbled through the floorboards, shaking the entire stone foundation of the church. Shea took Tina by the hand and marched up to the altar, barking a command for the train system to prepare for departure. Cascading holographic system screens ignited across the nave, revealing that this entire cathedral was Shea's actual locomotive cabin. Shea tossed a sleek black lockbox through the air, offering it as a reward for helping her break free from this world. "Do not worry," she said, "it is completely safe and tailored specifically for your current level." Her words only confirmed my dread. That blasphemy card was definitely a lethal curse. "Enough daydreaming," she cheered. "Let me show you what a real high-tier train looks like." Pitch-black railway tracks materialized under her colossal engine, and in the blink of an eye, the entire behemoth flashed straight to the station platform. The speed was blinding. Next to her beast of an engine, my level 3 train crawled like an absolute snail. I looked around the massive cathedral in utter shock, asking how many upgrades it took to turn a train car into an entire church. "Are you?" Shea boasted with a grin, proudly announcing she was a level 57 train captain back in her prime. Her voice faded into background noise as my brain completely stalled on the number 57. If every train upgrade demanded higher platform clearance, I wondered if there were actually nightmare stations scaled past level 50. Shea waved her hand and cleared it up. Platforms, facilities, items, and chests were all strictly capped at level 12. Only train captain levels could climb into the stratosphere, though she admitted her intel was 15 years out of date. She finished locking in her departure settings, walked right up to me, and playfully poked my cheek. "Never let that blasphemy card leave your side," she warned, her playful tone turning deadly serious. There was no malice behind her words, so I gave a reassuring smile and swore I would not ditch the piece she gave me. She urged me to combine the full card as soon as possible, promising that despite the risks, the payoff would be massive. A hint of melancholy crept into her voice as she told me to enjoy the remaining hours on land while waiting for the station timer to expire. She revealed that the townhouses were just train cars she cobbled together, telling me to loot whatever I wanted and burn the whole place to the ground. "I will never step foot here again," she muttered, taking one last look at her 15-year prison as the heavy train doors slid open. Tina took my hand with a bright smile, telling Mr. Prosecutor it was time to step off the train. I patted her head, remembered how much she loved fruit, and pulled 10 blessed white forest fruits straight out of my remote storage. Tina happily took a bite, sweet juice bursting across her lips as she thanked me for the treat. Shea caught the sweet aroma in the air, looking up from her console and freezing the moment she spotted the glowing fruit. She muttered to herself in shock, wondering how a rookie got his hands on produce radiating an authentic divine blessing. And summoning items from thin air? A rare remote storage module on a level 3 train made 0 sense. She wondered if 15 years in isolation had made her obsolete, burning with curiosity over what my talent actually was. Totally oblivious to her internal panic, I gave Tina a final wave and stepped off into the snow with my black box. Stepping outside gave me a full view of her Class 57 Leviathan, an 18-carriage behemoth stretching across the second track. Painted in matte black with flowing white angel sigils, each carriage looked like a luxury palace, compressing cathedral-sized halls into a single train car. I looked back at my dinky two-car setup and felt a hit of pure jealousy, though I swore my train would be bigger and thicker eventually. The second I stepped into my cabin, my terminal buzzed with an incoming friend request from Shea. I hovered over the decline button, knowing getting tangled up with an unpredictable monster like her was asking for trouble. Before I could tap reject, a force system message hijacked my screen, flashing a cute smiling Shea emoji asking if I dared refuse. Faced with a choice between turning into a wooden puppet and staying alive, I hit accept in a heartbeat. To soothe my bruised ego, I quietly set her contact nickname to Golden Retriever. Her voice piped through the speaker immediately, mocking my stupidity and warning that adding friends lets high-tier captains track you anywhere. I added a petty new prefix to her profile notes, the villainous Big Golden Retriever. A colossal roar shook the snow-covered platform as her Class 57 Leviathan surged to life after 15 years of dead silence. Dazzling fireworks exploded across the midnight sky, showering the snowy town in brilliant bursts of color. Inside her cockpit, Shea sucked on her lollipop with a triumphant smile, relishing the sweet taste of freedom. Ethereal shadow chains shot forward from the Caucasia, laying shimmering black tracks across the snowy void. Shea's voice blared over the station radio, proudly announcing the departure of the Angel of the Night. The pure white angel patterns on the black carriages came alive, flapping their wings as the entire behemoth warped into nothingness. Mystery Bell Town settled back into total silence. Seeing that animated train skin in action was undeniably cool. I turned my attention back to the gift box Shea left behind, feeling its solid, balanced weight in my hands. The system scanned the item, revealing a level 9 2x2 safety box, an indestructible personal vault that could never be broken or picked. Once placed, it permanently bound to the owner, and could never be moved by another living soul. Level 9? Holy crap. Sister Shea was ridiculously generous. I immediately opened my contact list, erased Old Woman, and replaced it with Beautiful and Kind-Hearted. Curious to see what was tucked inside, I pressed my thumb onto the center scanner of the box.